All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 360 Sports Show, coming to you live here on Sunday, March 21st, 2021. We have got a jam-packed show for you here this morning. I am Andrew Pizzelli. He is Christian Lauber. We're coming to you live through Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe on all those platforms to never miss a live edition of the show. Go back and watch any past edition of the show, and you can always take the 360 Sports Show on the go with our podcast, which is available through Sounder FM or wherever you get your podcasts from. Jump in the chats of the live streams if you want while we're live. You can also send us an email, the360sportshow@gmail.com. We actually have plenty of listener questions for this week because, Christian, it has been a busy week. And we'll start with the NFL.
What happened this
mostly
week?
a little something. I think. Free agency began. And I think neither of us expected that nationally the Patriots would be a headline coming out of free agency. You know, locally they're always going to be the headline. They're the biggest show in town. But I don't think we thought nationally the Patriots spent as much money in free agency, just about, as Robert Kraft spent to purchase the team in 1994.
Yep.
Insane. Your initial impressions, we'll break it down. We're going to go through some of these moves, but just off the top, your initial impression of what the Patriots accomplished in free agency.
Well, technically, it wasn't even free agency. It was tampering period. So
True.
they signed about 17 guys in the legal tampering period, which what even is that anymore? It might as well be free agency, but pretty unprecedented for this Patriots team. I don't remember any time ever that they've done anything like this. Now, obviously, you don't have a quarterback anymore in Tom Brady, but the team was in shambles. Let's just say it like it is. The team was downright bad in terms of just roster talent. Now it looks better. It looks a lot better. I like most of the moves they do. Some are, on the outside, kind of looking in, see what they have. But overall, I mean, just jumping off the page, it's just the two tight ends is phenomenal. I thought, Jonnu Smith, he was going to be the first name, off the board. And then I said, okay, once they got Jonnu, it was probably, okay, they're going to have a lesser guy, maybe Ossie. And then the next day it's Hunter Henry. So you have this two tight end set. That to me is the biggest takeaway. And obviously the wide receivers. Aguilar, I like. Maybe a little bit of an overpay, but overall, who cares? Like, what does that even mean? And then on the defensive side, they got Matthew Judon, which I like as well. Hopefully, he lives up to the contract that they gave him. I think he's a pretty good player, but he wasn't a Ravens offense where he was just going full steam ahead most of the time. So,
Yeah.
But they got other guys around him as well. So they've improved mightily, and it's about, can they get on the same page now here? Throughout this year, we saw a team like the Bucs who weren't together. They won their last 8 games, but they were really 7-5 and kind of questioning where they were. So you come into the season with the Patriots now, it's, can everybody get on the same page? The roster has talent all over it now, thankfully. So it should be a pretty good product. But to me, the first thing is the tight ends. I mean, that's just that jumps right off the page.
I knew that Jonnu Smith was going to be the first call they made. Now, it's the first call. Doesn't mean that they're going to get him or that he's going to want their contract. So I knew he was their primary target to start. Then they get him almost immediately. And right away, it's wow. Well, you know what? Honestly, I'm kind of happy already. They could just have gone, and that was their big spend. And like you said, it was just every half hour to an hour, there was another one. I think it shows you that Bill was really not happy going 7-9. That he never would say it during the season, and he never does. But he knew and has admitted that his roster was garbage, and that some of the picks he's made were garbage. Going out and signing all these wide receivers, he's telling you he doesn't think a lot of N'Keal Harry. Going out and signing the top 2 tight ends on the free agent market when he drafted 2 last year, and has a guy that they kind of like in Ryan Izzo, or liked on the team at the time, admitting they were mistakes. And admitting Bill will never admit mistakes publicly, but he's admitting them with his moves, and he's admitting to the rest of everybody else that he knows the roster's no good. Bill, the GM, is flexing his muscles right now, and people want to try and compare this to 07. I think it's different because, like you said, you don't have Brady. You are now at one of these teams in a position where you have the cap space. You have to spend it. I think that's what we all thought. You said it a couple of weeks ago. I said it by myself on the show last week. Listen, you have an opportunity. Let's see what the Patriots do. If they take the same approach, like, well, we're just going to kind of build it the way we do and da-da-da-da, could be really disappointing. They got super aggressive because they had to be, because the roster was garbage. And I love all these moves. So let's just, for people who are, maybe not totally sure, let's go over this first. Departuring. People who are no longer on the Patriots. Brandon Copeland, who I liked, signed, got hurt, basically didn't play at all last year, but I thought was going to be a really good locker room guy for the team. He's gone, signed with the Falcons. Ryan Izzo, who I just mentioned, traded to the Houston Texans. We'll get into that a little while later. Bo Allen, released. Marquise Lee, released. That's a guy who some people thought could be part of that wide receiving core. Nope. Adam Butler, gone, signed with the Dolphins. Joe Tooney, big sign for him. He's with the Kansas City Chiefs now on a huge contract. I think that's great for him, really bad for some of these teams that were like looking for top-tier offensive linemen, like the Packers or the Seahawks, who were like in on him, who need help. Terrence Brooks signed with the Houston Texans. Marcus Cannon traded to the Houston Texans. And then Pat Chung announced his retirement earlier this week. Staying, J.C. Jackson tendered with a second-round pick. I got to imagine he's going to play on that nobody's going to give up that pick for him. I doubt. Still could happen. Returning to the Patriots, David Andrews, huge deal. He goes out, basically tests the market, finds out, I'm not worth what I thought I worth, I guess, so I'll come back. Nick Folk coming back. Cody Davis, Carl Davis, Dietrich Wise, big contract. Justin Bethel, great special teamer, bringing him back. We all know Cam Newton. We went over this for the past 2 weeks, bringing him back and what that meant. And the Cam Newton one was the one that signaled to us, oh gosh, are they just trying to run it back? Are they just going to like draft a whole bunch of guys, not spend a lot of money in free agency on big name players and just try and like really slow build? Well, then came you're right, Christian, the tampering period. Trent Brown traded to the Patriots. And then here it comes. Jonnu Smith, David Godchow, Jalen Mills, Matthew Judon, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Henry Anderson, Hunter Henry, Ted Karras, bringing back Kyle Van Noy, Montavious Adams, and then Raekwon McMillan, a good linebacker, I think, that they basically get to poach from the Raiders because he got released. And there's probably going to be more. There's going to be more of these guys that are cap casual. Will Fuller on the market. Like, there's going to be more guys that, with the money they still have, and it's flexible. A lot of these guys, it's like 2-year, 3-year deals. And you look at their cap in 2 or 3 years, they have so much. People are saying, like, oh, if the Patriots were the Jets, they'd get dragged for these moves. No, the Jets sign a guy like Jonnu Smith to a 7-year contract, and he's locked up on buku bucks for forever, and it's terrible. It's a 3-year deal. These deals with the cap where it goes up are going to be steals. Steals in a couple of years. So I think these are all fantastic moves. Great moves. Great to go out and address needs. Tight end was a problem. Wide receiver was a problem. The middle of your defense was a problem. They were the worst team in the league at making plays at or around the line of scrimmage. Terrible. Knowing some guys are leaving. Marcus Cannon probably on the way out, so you trade for Trent Brown. That's great. You get something in return for Marcus Cannon. You get his money off the books as well. Patrick Chung, you know that retirement's coming. A great Patriot. He retires. You have Jalen Mills to kind of fill that similar type of role now as that kind of do everything, versatile safety, corner, just a general defensive back. They filled all of their needs except one. There's one left. And we'll get to the...
What might that be?
It may be the guy throwing the ball.
The most important position in all of sports?
All of these signings are great, but if next year all you have is the guy that might still be throwing ground balls, you're wasting the money you just spent. You're wasting a season. Now, I think Cam will be better with this roster. He
Uh,
has to be.
I
I
don't know
think
if
he'll
you're
be better.
wasting a season. I don't know about that.
But here's the thing: you've invested all, like I said, 2-3 years. This roster could look completely different again because of the way
Sure.
these guys' contracts are structured.
They're drafting a
Um,
quarterback now, though, I would think.
you
So,
that's the point. At minimum, if you're saying we've brought Cam back, he was our insurance policy, but we're okay with him being the starter. He's going to be better. He's betting on himself again. That's all great. They need to either trade and get a established star, if it's available to them to do, or they need to draft a legitimate blue chip quarterback. Now there's a lot of debate over what guys you'd value more. We can have that discussion a little later on, especially the closer we get to the draft, and we'll just kind of get our general opinions on that here. But that's what you have to do. If they don't do that, if they don't draft a quarterback in this draft, or they draft another Jared Stidham type, some guy in the 4th, 5th round, they go after Kellen Mond, right? Some guy who's going to go in like the 6th round. I look at that as a lost opportunity. You're basically wasting, because what if Cam's terrible? And now you're just going to waste a year of all this talent? Because Cam, just being a little bit better, gets you to what? 10-6 with this roster? If Cam's just only a little bit better than what he was last year?
you have to make the playoffs this year. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is.
Yes. And I think 10-6 might not get you there. Even with, or I mean, who knows what it'd be? 11-6 this year, the extra game. It wasn't good enough for the Dolphins last year, even with the extra playoff team. So I think even if you expect Cam to be better and the team to be better, like you said, you're paying this much into this free agent class, into what they're going to invest in draft capital into this team. If the quarterback is a big problem again next year, it won't matter. All of these moves will be for naught. You'll be taking the same amount of flack for basically hamstringing your team.
Maybe. I don't know. I think
No?
they're going to do some different things this year. And let's not look. I'm on the quarterback train of Cam Newton's not the guy really, but I'm also thinking the roster around him wasn't very good either. So I think that elevates the team a little bit, and hopefully it's more of a normal year than it was last year. And not to give the guy an excuse of COVID, but he was out 2 weeks. 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, and obviously didn't look the same when he got back. He looked pretty decent in the Seahawks game, the Raiders game, not so much. But overall, I think once you elevate the roster around him, it's going to be a lot of run game. It's going to be a lot of defense focus, and hopefully he can hit the tight ends over the middle, or he can hit Aguilar going down.
What if he can't though?
Sideline.
What if he can't? And you didn't draft a quarterback in the 1st round?
Well, I mean, if they don't have a plan behind him, then that's bad. But
that's what I'm saying. They need to have a if it's going to be Cam to start, there better be a plan behind him.
There's no way they don't draft a quarterback in this draft, even if it's Mond or someone like that. There's absolutely no way they can afford to do that unless there's a guy that they see that they can trade for and nobody else sees it. So, I mean, Garoppolo I think is out. I think that's kind of squashed at this point.
Yeah.
So to me, it's Newton's the guy. The roster around you is better. Hopefully Trent Brown can stay on the field and actually wants to play. And you use that to your advantage in terms of run game. You use the tight ends, both of them in there. Newton has always been good throwing to the tight end. So he had Greg Olsen in Carolina. Even last year he hit him more than the guy before. I mean, those tight ends were not great. Now you have 2 really good tight ends. So I think that it just improves your offense overall. And I'll have to pull up this statistic, but people think, look, the eye test tells you one thing, right? The stats were pretty similar to Brady the year before Cam got here. And now with an elevated roster, I think Newton, although it's not going to look very pretty, I think they should be competing for the division, and also they should be in the playoffs. They should win you a divisional round and probably vie out maybe the round after that. But they should be in that spot.
I just don't know. I want to have faith. I would love for Cam to succeed, because I think if you can get good Cam, if he can be actually, if it was the passing problems were because of the talent, and now you've added a serious amount of talent, and he can be giving you something in the passing game with the ability he has with his legs. They are a dangerous team. They will be battling with the Bills for the division, and hopefully they can win a round or two. But I'll accept if that doesn't happen, if they've got a plan in place behind him. If they have a rookie quarterback they can turn to, and at least there's some semblance of a plan where, hey, this guy's here. Even if it's, say they move up and take a swing on a guy, higher than 15. Even if that guy doesn't start right away, it's like the Patrick Mahomes thing. Let him sit behind Newton, even if Newton has a decent year. Newton never loses the starting job, but we know here's the heir apparent, and this guy's going to be the guy next year, hopefully. If they take a quarterback in the draft, I mean, you seem, Christian, to be willing as long as they draft anybody. If they take a guy in the first round, which of those quarterbacks? I mean, obviously we'd all take Trevor Lawrence. That's not going to happen. Now, who knows? Silly Billy could just go all out here and be like, I've gotten freaky here in free agency. Dollar Bill has gotten freaky in free agency. Now I'm going to trade like 4 first-round picks and like 4. He's going to pull the draft day thing and move like the first and second rounds for the next 3 years to go get Trevor Lawrence from his friend Urban Meyer. But aside from something crazy like that happening, who do you like? Who would you want to see them? And there's 3 guys. I don't think Justin Fields will be in play. I don't think they're going to be able to get up that high. It's guys like, it's Trey Lance. Mm-hmm. Maybe Zach Wilson falls. I mean, he's a guy that, like, if different people don't value him right. It's Lance. It's Jones. Maybe Young. But the other guy, Trask, who could be available late first round, second round even. You could even take him later second round. But he's a guy that he's not as mobile, but he's a very skilled passer. Out of those 4, who would you want them to take? And you'd be happy.
I would say, I mean, look, if anybody's expecting them to draft a quarterback and that quarterback to come in and play right away, you're mistaken. It's going to be a year off. So this is going to be a project guy. So I would not mind Trey Lance behind Newton. Have him learn for a year and see what he got. He's got a lot of tools. He's like, Josh Allen, maybe something like that.
It's a good comp.
So he's got all the tools. Can he put it all together? We don't know that. But I want them to identify the guy, and I want them to make a move for him, say, i.e. KC, Patrick Mahomes. If you see the guy there and he's available at 8, but he's not going to be there at 9, go up and grab him. And that lets us know you've identified the guy. You're going to throw him behind Newton. It's going to be, a year where you're probably not going to win a Super Bowl, but you should be in the playoffs and in contention for the division. And then next year, away you go with the new guy. So that's the guy I'm looking at in terms of what's available. Obviously, I would take, Fields or Lawrence. But I would not mind them taking Lance or a person like that, quarterback like that. But it's all about them identifying the guy. So I want to know that they're identifying someone. They're going to go up and get them if he's there. And if not, they're going to draft a guy in the second or third round that they think can play. Because Stidham cannot play. So no. I think that's pretty clear. So that ship has sailed. And even though he's getting the Patriots wide receivers out to California or whatever, that doesn't mean much because
too late, buddy.
Yeah, you're a year late. So I want to see Newton in front. Obviously, I think he's your guy at this point. Unless something, miraculous happens with a trade. Newton's the guy. You're going to be run heavy defense and then, hit the tight ends. And hopefully the new wide receivers will actually do something here. But Lance or a project guy like that behind Newton, I would not mind.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk because he's going to be right there about Mac Jones. And I know nobody knows. It's so tough, right? Because the Alabama quarterback thing. He played and has played with wide receiving cores that are better than what the Patriots will be working with. It's a fact. His 3 wide receivers are going to go in the first round. It's insane. So I would be so leery of taking him just because of that. If you're going to be banking on him, I like the raw talent that you have with Lance. I think Josh Allen's a good comp, and it could go one of 2 ways. He'll either develop into what Josh Allen was this year, which was borderline MVP and a really good thrower of the football and a guy who could kind of do everything, triple threat. He could also totally be what Josh Allen was his first year and never get any better, which was can't read the defense, doesn't know how to put any touch on passes, and is throwing like 4 or 5 interceptions. So
Sure.
it's high risk, high reward with Lance. That's why I kind of feel like I would be more fine with they draft for need another middle linebacker in the first round at 15. You draft for need at 42 or 46, wherever it is. And then you could probably package together some of those third and fourth picks to get back. Maybe you send a player who you're thinking about cutting, a guy on one year left, who knows, and to get another. Hey, maybe somebody wants J.C. Jackson and you give him that second round pick. You get back into the second round and then you take Trask later in the second round. And so you went middle linebacker, whatever that other need is, and then you got a quarterback. I like Trask because we saw him play and produce when his best players were there, and then when his best players sat out or were hurt, and he was still able to almost lead his team to a conference championship and get to the college football playoff. So I really like that. I kind of see some of the intangibles there with him, and his ability to do more than one thing with the football. He can throw it deep. He can feather it in with a little bit of touch. Trey Lance has just got a cannon that you got to need to like calibrate. He's got so much raw talent to work with. So I'd be happy. Would you be happy with that if they went need, move up, get a guy like Trask late in the second round or third round, and then that's the backup plan?
If they think he can play, sure. I'm not sure Trask can play. So, yeah, I mean, I want them to, like I said, I want them to identify the guy and go grab that guy. If it's not in the first round, then yeah, you need a linebacker. You need someone in the front seven. Sure, absolutely. I said from day one, if they went linebacker there, I wouldn't be mad about it. I think that's a clear hole. And obviously, you have Van Noy and these guys coming back and Judon now, but you need someone behind Van Noy because he's here for what, 2 years now.
Yeah.
And also Hightower. Who knows what with the Hightower situation?
He's probably at the end. Let's talk about that real quick. I do want to talk about the quarterback trade market, but there's a big discussion to have about that. Some things going on with Deshaun Watson. Real quick though, on the front seven, they go after a guy. They get Montravius Adams, Kyle Van Noy coming back, as you said. Henry Anderson is a D lineman. They go grab Devon Godshaw, and then Matthew Judon. Judon's a guy. What's your thoughts on Judon? Do you like that signing? Do you like him?
Yes, I think so. I mean, look, I think he'll do some different things that he did with the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens are a blitz-heavy team, so he obviously just kind of was told, "Here you go. You're going to be one-on-one with the running back, beat him and sack the quarterback," and he did. So that's obviously a good thing. But I think they'll do a little, that amoeba type defense if they can run it with Brian Flores a couple of years ago. That's kind of what you're looking at with all these guys now. And I think Judon is just another step in that. I mean, he's a good pass rusher. Can he do the other things that they'll ask him to do? I hope so, based on the contract. But again, I think they wouldn't go after the guy unless they thought he could play. So
yeah,
I think he's going to help the pass rush for sure. And I think he allows you now to do some different things in terms of standing up on the line. Maybe he's off the line. I think he gives you a versatile guy there to do, hopefully to do multiple things. But I think he's going to be a primary guy to pass rush with, Winovich, Van Noy, these guys. I think you have a bunch of different guys that can do different things. And I think that's a good thing for the defense because the last year, I mean, the front seven couldn't tackle, couldn't stop the run, and they didn't really pressure the quarterback much. So now you brought in a number of these guys. Obviously, the D-line guys are huge. And then Judon with, your different guys. Hightower coming back, Winovich, Van Noy. It just allows so much more, different looks than you could give a year ago.
Yeah, I agree. I worried that he, like you said, I mean, the Ravens, they kind of like to just turn guys loose and let them, like, hey, just go get them. A lot of his stuff was, as you said, in mismatches, his ability to actually generate pass rush on his own in scheme. But guess what? Who's better at scheming it up than Belichick? So
Right.
this was I asked somebody their take pros and cons on Judon. So this is from a Ravens source. His only sacks came when a tight end or running back was on him, or if an interior offensive line double teamed a D lineman, Judon would take advantage of the gap. Hasn't shown an ability to consistently create his own pressure. Could be coaching, who knows, but I trust our meaning the Ravens, ability to develop pass rushers. I think his numbers reflect a creative defensive scheme that allowed him to move around and put him in positions to succeed, which I think Belichick will strive with. Pros, he has a strong motor and nose for the football, seems to always be around a play, and always hustles on the line of scrimmage. Need that. He's a loud and vivacious personality that is never afraid to give the media a nugget or golden soundbite. We'll see how much of that we get.
Yeah, he's been told to shut up already. No worries about that.
He will be a great addition to your locker room. However, his antics sometimes hurt the team. Multiple occasions where he has been flagged 15 yards for conduct twice in the same game. He should play a traditional outside linebacker, one hand in the dirt kind of pass rusher. Just move him around the D-line and have him attack the quarterback.
One thing about the Ravens and the disciplinary stuff, I hate to break it to you, source, but that's a Ravens thing. They're kind of stupid. So I don't think Judon is like, he's getting flags all over the place when he comes here. I think that's a Ravens mentality. Earl Thomas, Judon, Ray Lewis, Suggs, all these guys always used to do that. It's a Ravens thing.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Aggressive to a fault.
Pretty
at
much.
Times.
Yeah.
So, but I thought that was great analysis. I mean, that kind of was similar to the things like we just kind of had initial impressions of. So based off of that, if he's a scheme guy, great. I mean, Belichick is gonna find the scheme for you.
Who's better at putting guys in positions to succeed than Bill Belichick? There's your answer. Nobody. So it's like you trade pennies for Kyle Van Noy and he's a nobody, and then he gets paid because he came here and he was put in a position to succeed. He's going to put Judon. He's not going to pay Judon all this money and then throw him in like a cornerback slot and have him, run with a running back.
Which I think though is a sign of, like we talk about, is this different? Before, like we'd see, like they do this in the draft too. It'd be like, Clay Matthews is there. Well, he's not their kind of linebacker. They like to have linebackers. Sometimes you just go out and get players that are really good and you find a fit for them. And I think it seems more recently, the last few years, Belichick has been much more willing to do that in the last half of this decade, the last 5 years, as opposed to say the previous 5 to 10 years, a willingness to say, here's a really good player. If we can afford to get them on the team, I'm going to put them in a position to succeed. Now, a lot of times he's trying to do it with bargain guys. Oh, let me poach a Kyle Van Noy for a 7th-round pick off the scrap heap because I can make him play better than he is. Now it's, we have to spend this free agent money. I'm going to go out and get this guy who, maybe he generated things off of scheme and not necessarily raw ability or talent, but he's the best at doing something, or one of the best on the market at doing something. We're going to bring him in here. We'll find a fit for him. We'll make it work. Total shift in usually how they do business, which is refreshing. Sometimes it's like you just need the talent. Go out and get guys that do things well and put them on your team.
He's got 10 passes defended. So that's pretty good. I mean, that means he's either getting his hands up at the line or he's, running with a running back maybe. But I'll tell you what, I mean, look, it's a lot different.
How many of those were against Cam Newton?
Yeah. 7 probably. But it's a lot different having a guy like Judon where you can put him on one side from, a guy like Winovich or Van Noy who can also, rush the passer, and he'll be automatically in a position to succeed because of the roster. I mean, it's not like they just signed him and that's it on defense. They signed a number of guys. So they're going to throw him all over the field. And I mean, maybe he's only good against tight ends or running backs. Sure. So what do you do with him? You put him on a running back or a tight end.
Yeah. They sucked against everybody last year. They sucked against running backs and tight ends. Colin writes in with the question, kind of along the lines of what we're discussing. If the plan in the first round isn't to get a quarterback, I'd like for them to go after an Alabama wide receiver over a linebacker, just in case Nelson Aguilar ends up sucking. Your thoughts on the wide receiver core and whether they should draft a... I'll be stunned. I mean, it would be great if they went up. Say they got one of these Alabama wide receivers, that'd be awesome. But I just can't see them after whiffing on Harry wanting to dip the toe back in again at the wide receiver in the first round.
Nor do I want them to do that. I feel like as soon as Bill Belichick drafts a wide receiver, they automatically suck. So it doesn't matter who it is. He could be an Alabama guy and the best wide receiver coming out of the draft. Bill drafts him, he's going to suck just automatically. So I'm a no-go with wide receivers at this point. I'll trade N'Keal Harry for a bag of balls and maybe like a 6th-round pick. And then we're off the wide receiver train for a while.
Yeah. Do you worry about Nelson Aguilar at all? I mean, he's had instances of the drops when he was in Philly. That's obviously a team and a market that has a passionate fan base, and the media and everything around. There's a lot of pressure for playing in Philly as opposed to playing in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
or
they
playing
kind
for
of
the
ran him out
Raiders.
of town. I mean, he was in Las Vegas with no fans, right? So
yeah,
what can you say? But Philly kind of ran him out of town because of the drops. But overall, I mean, look, I think coming here, I think he'll be better off. He still obviously might have some trouble with catching the ball. I mean, I think that's every guy. I mean, and also the guy throwing it to him might throw it at his shoes. So we'll see. But I would say I like the Aguilar signing. I'm not opposed to it. Now, a guy like Smith-Schuster or someone like that, maybe not him exactly because I don't really like his whole, attitude. The Pittsburgh guys, there's just something about them. Maybe they're just Steelers, so I don't like them. But someone like that, I would have liked. Obviously, Galladay got paid way too much money to come here. But I think they got two guys that should come in and be able to play. So Aguilar, I think, is pretty good. If he can, get out of his own way. And Bourne, same thing. I think he's a number 3, number 2, number 3, and both of those guys should come in and play pretty well here.
Yeah. Colin also says, Belichick turns college receivers into stone. True.
Pretty much.
But he turns college quarterbacks into elite slot receivers. He also said, Cam Newton is Justin Fields' mentor since high school. I wonder if Cam will try to go to bat for him with BB to try and trade up for him in the first round, especially since Cam had been beat up as bad just about any QB I've seen in the NFL. Not that I think he'll have much pull in personnel decisions in the Patriots front office.
I might disagree with that. I don't know. Bill loves him some Cam Newton. Seriously.
Sure, but I think the point is more that if Cam comes to Bill and was like, hey man, if you're going to draft a quarterback, and is the understanding, I'm the starter, but this kid's the future, and we just kind of roll with it. Go get this guy. I worked with him. I know him. I like him. If he takes my job, I'll be happy with it. Does any of that factor in? Would Bill listen to that and take that into account at all?
Probably not. No, but also I would say if Fields is, I just think the price for those guys. Yeah, I think the price is going to be too high for those guys, and they're not going to want to pay. For a top 3, I would guess, for Fields.
Some people think Fields is. I don't understand it. Fields is slipping down the draft. I don't understand. Yeah. He was supposed. There was talk that wait a minute, Meyer is going to Jacksonville. They get the number 1 pick. Would they take Fields first? And what would that do to the draft board? Now Fields is ranked the latest rankings I saw. Now again, we're gonna talk to Brad Kelly, who I will swear by with these rankings and projections. Some of these other yokels who are putting Fields as the 5th quarterback in the draft blows my mind because I think he's the 2nd best just off of what he's proven to you. Physical ability, working with talent, without talent, playmaking, intangibles, guy playing through God knows what sort of fractured rib cage and cartilage last year. He's shown me everything. And at this point in the NFL, if your only thing is he's kind of undersized, stop it. Look around the league. Look at the guy in Arizona. Look at Russell Wilson.
I was going to say Russell Wilson. Yeah,
it doesn't matter anymore. These guys are all so quick. They get out of the pocket. You can work around that. Drew Brees was 5'9". So
I mean, look, if they were to go up and get Justin Fields, I would probably run around the neighborhood in my underwear. I would be happy. That would be the day for me.
Maybe we have to do a live. Maybe we have to do a live show now on the draft.
Yeah, I'll give you a GoPro of that when I'm out there. Yeah,
on the chest, one with the arm right here. Woo!
Oh yeah, selfie stick. 100%. No, I'm serious. I would do cartwheels over that, no doubt. But I just don't think I don't think they're gonna go get a guy like that just because of the price. Now, if he falls and he's at like 8, 9, 10, there's a chance that they could jump up there and get him.
Yeah.
It just depends on the price. I mean, they're not going to pay out the nose for a quarterback. I think we know that by now, right?
Would it shock you though, after everything we saw in free agency? Like, we know they had to spend the money, but they very well couldn't have. And not only have they spent the money, they went out and got guys like the top 2 players at a position came here. They went and got Hunter Henry Johnson. They're not just spending money, but they're spending it on the top guys. It's not like, oh god, Aguilar's the one where you can kind of be like, but they're spending it on. It's good money spent. Would it honestly surprise you now if they did say like, wow, they're trading 15, Stephon Gilmore, and like a 2nd round pick next year or a first next year, and they moved up to 4 with the Falcons, and now they're drafting Justin Fields? Would it shock you?
Not really at this point. No, I'm kind of waiting for the draft at this point now because I feel like there's something going to happen, and then I'm just going to be let down. You know what I mean? So it's going to be probably. I mean, let down is a strong term. I think linebacker I'd be fine with at 15 if they didn't go get a quarterback. But I'm vying like in the back of my head, like there's a chance they go get Fields or someone like that, and I would be excited about that because I think.
If you're gonna run around the neighborhood in your underwear if they draft Justin Fields, what do you do if they trade up to number 1 and get Trevor Lawrence? Not safe for radio.
We can't talk about that. Yeah. No, it'd probably be pretty similar. Yeah, Patriots socks, Patriots underwear. I'm running around the neighborhood, especially now that it's nice outside. I'm game for it.
Oh, we got some time before the draft. We'll have to find listeners. Find
the neighborhood. I'm going down the road. How about that?
Yeah, you're running to my place. You'll be knocking on my door. Ding, 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 ding. Let's go jump in the ocean. Yeah. So the other thing, let's check in the comment section because we got. Honestly, I think this is from Nick. Honestly, I think Galladay is a good receiver, but he doesn't separate very well. He's a jump ball kind of guy, and that's really all he's good at. Your thoughts? I think he's more than that, but for what he got paid, he's not worth that to bring in to this team.
What was the guaranteed money though?
Well, that's true. All these contracts, the silly money. I talked about this last week. The void years thing. The fake money being thrown around. That's why, and not only that, the guaranteed versus non-guaranteed. Like Cam Newton, $14 million. Everybody freaked out, dude. It's like 5, and they can cut him and only have to pay him 1. So that's the real money.
He got $40 million guaranteed. It's 4 years, $72 million, $40 million guaranteed. That's a wide receiver. I agree. It's probably an overpay, but
I'd pay. But the thing is, like, he's not Julio Jones. Like,
no, but
he's not that good of a jump ball guy. You know, like
he does more than jump ball. I mean,
I know that's what I'm saying. But I'm just going off of Nick's assessment of he's a jump ball kind of guy. Even if you said he's just that, you pay that much for a guy that's a jump ball guy to a Randy Moss or a Calvin Johnson, who legitimately is a freak that could go up and get the ball.
He played for the Lions though. He'll be better in the Giants system, especially they have better wide receivers over there.
Yeah, but
it's an overpay. There's no question about it. It's an overpay. But
it was interesting to see.
A pretty good player.
It was interesting to see the wide receiver market basically just stall for like days because I think everybody was waiting to see if any of these quarterback moves happened. So it was like I think Juju, all these guys were in on the Dolphins. Like Galladay and Juju could have very well both gone to the Dolphins if they got a quarterback. And then we're going to talk about this next. That the quarterback market kind of started to maybe burn out. Some of the traction on those things stopped, and all of a sudden these wide receivers are like, well, I'm going to go to the Giants, or I'm going to go sign in Green Bay, or I guess I want to come back to the Steelers, but how do I make that happen? What Juju could have made on the open market, he only had like 1 or 2 places he wanted to go. Yeah, could he have taken way more money to go somewhere else, but he wouldn't want to go to somewhere that was going to be crap. And so he had to take that insanely structured contract. I gave my thoughts last week, Christian. What's your thoughts on the void year contracts and their propensity now? Quarterbacks, it kind of makes sense if, these are guys you think are going to be sticking around and you can keep restructuring it, for guys who are long-term guys, franchise cornerstones. Wide receivers, utility players, signing void year contracts where that money's just going to eventually come home to roost. Are the Steelers that close to a Super Bowl where them wanting to do that to keep Juju makes sense? What do you think?
I mean, look, it's kind of crazy with the contracts, but it also tells you that the cap is kind of caca. So I don't know. Like it's you can just manipulate anything in the NFL and make it work. Whereas like, the NHL, you can't just void a guy 5 years out and make his cap hit way lower or, basketball, you can't it just doesn't work that way. So the NFL's cap is kind of it's an interesting one. You know, I don't know my thoughts on it. I think it's fine. Obviously, I think it allows for more flexibility and more movement. Look, I mean, I think
Tampa's sticking together. All those guys are on void year
yeah,
deals.
pretty much. So it allows for more of that, and that's why I always say like, yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about overpays. Like a lot of people, came on and were like, "Yeah, Aguilar's that's way overpaid. That's a dumb contract." Any other team would be crucified for doing that. Not really. Every team is doing it. It's just the way it's structured is different.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's not really that big of an overpay. So I don't know. Guys like that, it doesn't really bother me that much.
Yeah. It's also a sign, too, the money, like I said, it's all going to be a steal in a couple of years from now. Guys like Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith,
Yeah.
in a normal year, they probably would have gotten way more. I think it speaks that the Patriots still and Belichick still has some cachet because these guys came here for less than what they would normally get on the market.
Mhm.
They didn't, and they got market price. They didn't ask for like the fact that both of them were willing to come. Hunter Henry saying, "No, I'll basically take the same deal to come here," tells you something. But in a couple of years, all these teams I think know. We saw it with the Dak Prescott extension, the TV money, which we saw, $90 billion. Holy cow! The money's coming. Now they're not going to just jump the cap up right away. It'll probably be they'll probably go up like 10 to 15 million next year, but then it could go up by as much as 50 million from where it is right now by 2 years from now. So the money is going to be insane, and all these deals are going to look like absolute steals. Colin just followed up on Aguilar. I'm not totally down on Aguilar. Love that he can create separation and make big plays. I just think it's a good idea to have some insurance for him. Yeah, but you know what that insurance is? That's them finding a guy in like the 6th round who is a bigger bodied, fast wide receiver that they'll just coach up. I'd be
Feel Harry?
as excited as I'd be if they like went after one of the Alabama receivers. I just wouldn't trust it. I don't trust them to do that. So I'd rather them draft linebacker, quarterback. At this point, I can't see them doing the typical Patriots thing and drafting a left guard in the 1st round because they found guys like Michael Onwenu in like the 7th round last year. So
Yeah.
they're much better at finding linemen later in the draft than any other team. So what I was saying about the quarterback stuff, let's talk quickly about Deshaun Watson here. We're gonna kind of keep rolling through the NFL stuff. We do have hopefully my phone's not blowing up with a cancellation here, but we will be having yes. Matt Murphy, our NBA draft and cap analyst, coming on today for the second half of the program because the NBA trade deadline's coming. We wanted to lead with the NFL stuff because there's just so much. But if you have NBA questions, be sure to drop those in the comment section as well. Or you can email the show, the360sportshow at gmail.com at any time. So our last kind of NFL thing here is this Deshaun Watson situation. I don't think any of us thought Aaron Rodgers was actually going to get traded. There's a little bit of smoke with Russell Wilson. I still don't think, even though they haven't done anything to help him, that guy's kind of a model citizen. He's going to show up for work. I really think Deshaun Watson was going to get traded, and they were going to feel a pressure to trade him. And now, I don't know if the team is the one sabotaging his market so that he's forced to stay, if this is happening just coincidentally to him. But here's the deal. 9 women now have come forward in part of a lawsuit alleging sexual assault. Basically, that it's massage therapists who they had appointments with him, and he scheduled appointments with them, and then they're working on him like after a practice or something, and he says, "Oh, can you massage my thigh? Can you go a little higher?" And then basically devolving it to him, what they say is asking for oral sex. And it's one of those sticky situations. That's not the right words to use. But it's one of those situations where even if he claims, well, they agreed, I asked and they said yes, there's a power dynamic there which basically voids any consent because It's Deshaun Watson making hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're probably just a regular old either. You're not. You're especially a woman in that position is going to feel, the power dynamic is just different. You're going to not know. Should I say yes? Should I say no? Could I lose my job if I say? There's all that garbage that goes on, which is unfortunate that that's the situation that these women get put in, having to say yes out of fear. Even if Deshaun Watson is totally innocent, if none of it happened, I feel like there's like 9 women now. It's a little too much smoke. Even if they're all lying, his trade market is kaput. So either
yeah.
he's not getting traded. Nobody is going to trade for him now. So the Texans are going to get their wish here. He's staying there. But your thoughts, Christian, on this situation? And I mean, I kind of feel like I think the Texans. You'll never be able to prove it. I don't think, but I think they had to have known or had an idea if this actually happened. If this isn't just a smear campaign and an opportunity and a money grab by these women, which I just seem to doubt with the amount of them who have been willing to come forward here and put pen to paper and risk things in a lawsuit. Their own whatchamacallits, reputations. That there's something here. Whether it's rape or not that's up for a jury of Deshaun Watson's peers if it gets that far to decide, or a court to decide. I think the Texans probably are the ones who leaked this. This just smells of Jack Easterby and them trying to be like, well, this guy wants to leave here. We're going to make it so he can't. It seems like that would be crazy. But at this point, what we know about what's going on in that organization, it honestly wouldn't surprise me.
I find that hard to believe. But obviously the timing is, it's interesting. Right when the guy wants to get traded, all this stuff comes out. Now, I will say this. I mean, look, at first everybody wants to say like, well, they're just trying to get money. Which I think is a fine assessment at first, right? If you want to go there, that's fine. But since then, I mean, there's texts. He's flying these women in from Atlanta to Texas. Like, you can't find someone in Texas. You're Deshaun Watson. You're a quarterback.
And he's like messaging them on Instagram.
Yeah.
That right there just screams of ugh.
You're like a celebrity figure. Now, whether the Texans leaked it or not, sure. I mean, you can make that argument for sure. I mean, it's just weird timing, but it's a lot of smoke for nothing to be true. So
yeah.
And also, there's these text messages that I just mentioned. I mean, it doesn't look great for him, and I think his trade market is kind of it's going to be squashed at the moment until this is figured out. And if it's not figured out, well, you shouldn't have done what you did, so you're going to be stuck with Houston or somewhere else, not playing. I don't know. It depends. But it's unfortunate that this is kind of the situation because the talent level is there. You're a star quarterback in the NFL. I would think you can, get whatever business you need to, have. You can get that done in a different manner. Like, it's not like you're some Joe Schmo living in Houston. You're pretty high up there in terms of celebrity type figure.
Yeah.
It just seems odd, and this is obviously not good for him because his wishes of being traded are now going to be, pretty much dead until this is figured out.
Yeah. And listen, the other side is that things do happen where there are plenty of women who go out to the club and gold dig these athletes because they know, hey, I can come on to him and we'll go up and we'll have a great night in a hotel room, and the next day I could scream whatever and he's going to have to pay me to be quiet. There are instances of that happening. That does happen. But that would be like one case. One person comes forward and they argue like, wait, you came on to me and blah, 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 blah. And it's a civil court mess. 9 people, 9 times that happens to one guy. It just doesn't, like you said, there's just too much smoke for them all to be lying and making it up because they're risking their own personal reputations on it. These are not just like random people. These are not like, oh, this is some random Instagram model. These are people. This was somebody who's working. This is a job. They're risking their career by doing this. That's where you have to look at it and say, ugh. It's not just smoke. There's a brush fire going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I mean,
So
look, there's not that much smoke until, I mean, look, nobody just, I just feel like it's just too much to be nothing at this point. Obviously, nobody knows the details, but there's going to be more coming out. There's text messages of him apologizing and saying this and that. He's flying people in from Atlanta to Houston. It's just, it looks a little odd at that point.
I'm just responding, just confirming with Matt Murphy, who will be coming on the program as shortly as he can. We are ready. Awesome. Do you think this? I mean, so obviously his trade value is down. I think the Texans have said that they don't want to trade him. They want to make him honor the 5-year contract, which he signed. Which again, I look at. It's like we compared Giannis in the NBA to Deshaun Watson. All the stuff that was problematic in that organization existed when he signed the contract. So why did you sign the contract? Because I think they're gonna have to. They want him to honor that contract. But say they decided that they did want to trade him now, his value is kaput. But would a team like the Patriots, who I think his talent would be a great fit here, because of this, true or not, let's just say it's all false. Me and you don't think that. I think there's certainly something here to these allegations. But let's just say it's all false. And even if and the courts say it's false, public opinion will be what it is. Knowing what Robert Kraft has gone through and experienced and basically got away with on a technicality and did not have to face any legal repercussions for, is this just too much smoke to want to bring into their organization? And that no matter what the value is for it, the Texans could say, all we want is a second-round pick, and that Robert Kraft would tell Bill, no.
Yeah, I would say before this, like once free agency started and not much detail was out on this, I would say crazier things have happened. They could actually go get this guy, depending on the price. But now I don't think they even go near it. I mean, unless stuff comes out just absolutely clearing his name and he did nothing wrong and, you know, it's kind of a money grab or whatever the situation, the end result has to be with him kind of steering clear of anything wrong doing in that situation. If that's the case, then yeah, I think, you know, maybe they take a stab at it. But at this point, I just don't see a scenario where the Patriots even go near it. Like, they don't want this stuff anymore. They don't want anybody. It's the same thing they released Antonio Brown. You know, story came out that he did something months ago and they still released him. So they don't want these stories anywhere near them.
It's unfortunate. Because I think there was enough smoke between the trades you'd seen them making. There was a lot of reporting, a lot of smoke that, hey, the Patriots have Deshaun Watson's attention now. They even had a little bit of Russell Wilson's attention with the moves that they made and the way they dropped into free agency. So they had the attention, and then all this comes out, and I think basically all that's dead. But there was a lot of talk like, hey, Nick Caserio and Bill Belichick are talking. There has been a phone call. Some of the other trades, hey, we'll give you Cannon. We've traded you Ryan Izzo. Now, not that Ryan Izzo is some sort of piece that that the Texans would covet, but the fact that they already had done 2 trades, and the fact that any trade for Deshaun Watson was going to have to come with a restructured contract because the Texans were not going to want to take a $65 million cap hit this year on that. The fact that Bill and Nick know each other, have worked well together, hey, they're going to work together. All sides will work together to get a deal, the right deal done, a restructure and a trade. Made a lot of sense. I don't see it happening anymore. Nick jumps in again, too. I think it is a little suspect that they all came out on the same day. Not saying the Texans did it, but I think that it's a little weird. Yeah, it seemed something's up. So we'll just have to keep our eyes on that. Kind of to round out this very Patriots heavy NFL free agency section here before we get to Matt Murphy in the NBA. With the moves that have been made, let's say even if the Patriots draft a rookie quarterback, he doesn't play this year. So it doesn't matter who it is. They don't play. Cam and this team as constituted, what do you realistically think they can achieve? Record-wise, where do they finish? And what's acceptable?
I would say 11-6. With the extra game here this season, probably just based on the roster right now. We'll see going forward. They can make another move, but um, they should be heavy ground game. I think they sign another running back here. Say they go heavy, run game with Trent Brown, and the strength of their offense is going to be their offensive line, I hope. Especially you have Ted Karras, who is a pretty good backup, and he can do multiple things. So just based on they're going to be ground and pound, defense heavy. They got a lot of talent now spread over the field, which is good. I'm thinking 11-6 somewhere in there. They should be vying for the division. I think the Bills still ultimately win the division, but they should be in the conversation and they should win a playoff round. That is in my mind at this point. Anything can happen now. Whether Newton goes down, if he's not playing well, I still feel like the quarterback is a big one. I have some type of faith that Newton will get his stuff together here this year, and he'll be better off than Stidham or Hoyer. So I'll take Newton over those guys. They got to draft a quarterback, and then you're looking at, look, I don't think they're going to compete for a Super Bowl, okay, unless Newton goes off and he's an MVP. But they should be, I'm going to say 11-6, 10-7, somewhere in there. They should be in the playoffs and win a round.
I agree. I think, and honestly, I think projecting better Cam, and better defense, but looking at the rest of the league, and how it's put together, I'd say they're a top 7 team, so they'll be in the wild card round. I don't think they win the division, and I give them good odds to win a game in that round. That's it. I think right now that without an upgrade at quarterback, I think that's their ceiling. Now, hey, anything can happen. I mean, they could get in and the defense could be playing amazing. They could have a top 5 defense, and they just have this insane, balanced ground control offense, and they just chew people up with Cam and the running backs and efficient passing. And the 2 tight ends are just monsters. And because they can put 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, a versatile running back, and Cam, and it's just like you just don't know what they could do on any given play. You get the fully realized vision of what Bill Belichick would want out of offense, which is that the defense just can never have the right personnel on the field at any time for a given play. And Cam can audible and check to things and adjust. Then they could be that's it. All of those things going right, I think they still lose in like an AFC Championship game to the Chiefs.
Yeah,
so that right now should be the absolute ceiling for Patriots fans' expectations.
I find it hard to believe that Newton's not going to improve at all. Just based on being here a year. So I have to believe that it still might not look very good. The ball coming out, his shoulder, his foot, whatever it is. So it might not look pretty, but can he get the ball to the tight ends? Because look, those 2 tight ends together on the field at the same time, they're going to be hard to cover. I mean, they're both pretty good tight ends. Now, can he get it there? That's the question. But I have to believe Newton's going to be better.
Yeah. We'll see. There's going to be plenty of NFL stuff to go around here as more, that second tier free agency shakes out over the next week. As we approach the draft, we'll be having Brad Kelly back on the program to give us his take on the NFL draft, kind of the state of the league as well, because there's a lot of interesting things going on with certain personnel, and I know he has some insights on those. But for now, we're going to shelf the NFL talk, and we're going to transition to the NBA. The trade deadline is this Thursday. It's kind of crazy that it's already this it's already even though it's later, it's that it's come up this fast on this NBA season, which is flying by. And to help us do that, friend of the program, our NBA cap and draft analyst, Matt Murphy. Welcome back to the program, sir. How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're good here.
Good.
It's
Could
crazy
be better
that
if the Celtics weren't terrible.
Oh yeah, well we're gonna get into that. There's plenty to digest here with the NBA, and so we're just gonna get right into it. I'll let Christian take it away here with our first question as we'll set the scene first before we get into some deep discussion. So go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, so just right off the top, who are the buyers, who are the sellers, and what is the impact of the play-in round on teams that are gonna kind of sell off pieces and maybe even go all in and buy?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the potential of the play-in series with those 9 and 10 seeds having a chance to make the playoffs, and also the flattening of the lottery odds the past few years, there's really less incentive to tank. So you have a situation where you have a ton of buyers in this league, a lot more than you normally would. And so there's all these teams that are desperately trying to make the playoffs. The problem with that is there's about 15 teams that have all of their first round picks tied up in some way or another. So they're really limited by the number of assets that they have to move around. This kind of goes back to something that's called the Stepien rule. So it's like every rule in the NBA is named after someone who broke some rule, right? So, so you're not allowed to trade first round picks in consecutive years. That's sort of the gist of it. And also you can't trade first round picks more than 7 years out. So you can't just say like, hey, I'll trade, Jason Tatum's son for whatever, Bradley Beal. So right now is a situation where, I mean, that's playing out now. The Bucks and the Rockets recently made this trade for PJ Tucker. The Houston wanted multiple first round picks. They couldn't do it though because they actually owned the Bucks 2022 first rounder. So they gave that back so that they could get a first round pick in 2021 and 2023. So there's a lot of really wacky stuff going on with draft picks that are tied up. I think there's going to be a lot of really unhappy fans, teams that, have a chance to make the playoffs. Maybe they would normally do a deal where they'd throw out some expiring contract and a draft pick and get their guy and make the playoffs. Those picks just aren't there this year.
Can I just say, the NBA is so wacky. Like, thank God you're here because I don't want to read all this crap. Like, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. It's just what they should do is take the CBA, tear it up, and start over. But what they do is they just amend. They pretty much just amend it every 7 years. So they just keep Frankensteining new things onto it to fix.
See appendice XX173.
Yeah. Pretty much, it's pretty brutal. So yeah, good thing we have Danny Ainge to skirt around all those details and potentially break those rules. But yeah, no, it's going to be tough. There really aren't a lot of sellers. I mean, even a team like the Kings, I mean, their ownership is pushing for making the playoffs. I think they've missed the playoffs 16 years in a row. So a lot of really, illogical decisions being made surrounding, potential to make the playoffs. The only teams I really see as sellers, Orlando Magic, the Cavs, the Rockets are probably going to have a fire sale. Sam Presti and the Thunder are always open for business. Those are really the only like surefire sellers in my opinion. Everyone else is just trying to make the playoffs, whether that's the right move or not going forward for their teams.
And you know what? COVID may have an impact on it as well. If you're a team like the Kings, who maybe in a normal year, if you're sitting there like, oh, we could make the playoffs, but hey, let's make this move to keep building our future. Teams have lost so much in revenue. If you have a chance to maybe have some fans in the building come playoff time, making back some money could be a part of it as well. Kind of with going off of there's a lot of guys who, as you said, are the big names are available. We all have kind of been going off a list, but I'll let you just kind of go ahead here. If there's anybody that you missed that I want you to hit on, I'll jump in with them. But in your mind, just give like a minute or two on the big names who are basically like surefires, like these are the guys who should go, or these are the guys that everybody expects to go, and where's likely for those players to land. So start with wherever you want.
Sure. I mean, one player that comes to mind is Andre Drummond. The Raptors are looking for a center. I mean, they've lost a lot of size over the past few years with Ibaka and Gasol heading out. And for all the talk about Drummond's defense, he actually has really great hands and gets into the passing lanes. It could be a good fit with drop coverages that they like to play, that they haven't been able to do so. They have homegrown talent, Chris Boucher, who's like a 7 foot, 195-pound center out there, putting together almost like a 6 man of the year campaign, but isn't really stopping anyone at the rim. So I think Drummond could be a good fit there, give them a lot of size. The problem with that is they have the salaries to make it work. So that's one constraint, one hurdle you have to get through. But they can only do it by combining the salaries of like 5 players. And you're not allowed to just waive those players. You have to waive players that are already on your team and then bring those guys in. So for the Cavs, they might not be willing to say, hey, there's 5 guys on our team that we want to cut.
Yeah.
So that's a big hurdle that we'll have to jump through. Portland could make more sense. I mean, they run similar type of defense. And he could also just get bought out, which I would hate because it would lead to more of this super teaming that we're seeing with Brooklyn and all these other teams. So that's a possibility. But yeah, Drummond stands out to me. Just kind of going through my list here. Kyle Lowry has been rumored to potentially go back home to Philadelphia. I mean, I thought Philly really cleaned up their depth chart. It didn't make any sense having Al Horford out there last year at power forward when you had Tobias Harris, who could also do that. So they basically swapped him out, added Seth Curry and Danny Green, 2 guys that can space the floor for Ben Simmons. So the depth chart makes a lot more sense. Sorry?
Looks pretty good right now, too.
They do, yeah. I mean, so it's playing out in terms of their wins. I think they're top seed in the East right now. So, I mean, but anytime you get into a situation like that, it sort of feels like they could be this regular season team. There's still the question of Ben Simmons. Once you get to the playoffs and the game slows down, you have to make shots in the half court. That's something that, you know, teams are going to play off of Ben Simmons. And so being able to add a guy like Kyle Lowry, who is like personally giving me nightmares watching him on the Raptors against the Celtics, I think that would be a huge move for them. And he also has a relationship with Daryl Morey from their time in Houston. So there could be like a weird little connection there that results in him, you know, his career coming full circle there.
Him and John Wall, that'd be an interesting backcourt.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Oh, sorry, no. You're saying John Wall on Houston?
Yeah.
Or yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm thinking Daryl Morey's on Philly now, right? He's
yeah, but it just made me think.
Oh,
anyway.
Yeah, deadly backcourt. Yeah, Houston's in a bizarre situation. They're probably going to sell everything. I mean, that was a guy I was going to list here was PJ Tucker, but he's already gone. Vucevic in Orlando. I mean, he's an interesting situation because he's made the All-Star team 2 of the past 3 years. The Magic are in a rough spot. They lost the 2 young players that they were building around in Markelle Fultz and Jonathan Isaac. Those guys are out with injuries. But, you know, Vuce is kind of on a big contract. It would be difficult to move him. I know the Celtics have been taking a peek at him, but with Rob Williams on the rise, it might not make sense in terms of your timeline of your team. Vuce is kind of in his like early 30s. There's other guys on the Magic that could be on the move. I mean, Aaron Gordon was rumored to go to Minnesota. They offered him a first-round pick. They ended up turning it down. We'll see if they revisit that. They've got a couple of veteran wings with Terrence Ross, Evan Fournier. So those guys could end up being on the move, going to a potential playoff team. I mean, that's just kind of scratching the surface. There's so many guys that could be on the move because, again, teams don't have a lot of first-round picks to trade. So
yeah,
kind of just like there aren't a lot of untouchables.
Yeah, well, guys like Terrence Ross, those are the role player type guys. You know, these other those guys don't compare to names like Drummond and Lowry and even Aaron Gordon and Vucevic. How about a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge, who obviously is a waning star? Where does he fit best in a trade scenario? And then where would he fit best if he gets bought out? Because I feel like because of the cap and the money situations, it's almost 2 totally different scenarios. There's one set of teams that could go after him if it's via trade, and a whole totally set of different scenarios if he's bought out.
Yeah, well, the Aldridge, that situation's tough to read. The Spurs play their cards close to their chest. They don't make a lot of in-season trades, and it kind of all depends on whether he's willing to come off the bench. Does he still want to be a starter in this league? He's in his mid-30s. Is he willing to do what we've seen Blake Griffin do, where he just basically join a team on a minimum contract in order to win? I think taking a buyout would obviously force his hand in that regard. As for a trade, maybe a team like Phoenix or Miami could scrap together the salary to make it happen, but he's just making so much money and doesn't have a ton of value where it could just end up being a situation where he gets bought out. So it would be difficult. It's kind of like with the Drummond situation, being able to aggregate all these player salaries, and then you have all these roster spots that you need to make space for. But who knows? I mean, the Heat just added Trevor Ariza. He's been traded like 11 times in his career. So maybe he'll be on the move again. No, I think the more likely outcome is that he's ultimately bought out.
What can he get that, like, if a guy like that is bought out of their contract, can he literally sign for straight pennies with anybody? Or is there like a minimum that he'd have to make?
Yeah, so there's a minimum contract in the league based on your years of service. And pretty much any team can sign that contract as long as they're not hard capped. So even if you're over the cap, you don't need to use a special exception. You actually it's technically a minimum player exception. And it's prorated for, however much time is left in the season. So, I guess in his terms, he'd be signing for pennies. Wouldn't be pennies for us, but
no. I'm just thinking we don't know what's going on in his mind. If he gets bought out, would he just go to whoever can offer him more? Like if, say, it's between the Celtics and the Nets, and the Celtics say, listen, man, we'll give you $5 million. And the Nets are like, hey, we can only give you like $800K, but you're going to come and win a championship. I guess, and I'm sure you might not know, who knows, because that's inside his head, but would the money mean more, or is he a guy that's actually just going to ring chase and would go to the Nets for that veteran minimum contract? What do you think?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's those two scenarios that you mentioned. Is he going to take the team that maybe has an exception and can give him a whole bunch of money? Typically, that's not a team that's going to win the championship. You're going to have to sign a minimum contract to do that. There's also the third option of, maybe just sort of sentimental value. He want to return to Portland, just regardless of their chances, just, hey, I want to have that reunion with that team, play with Dame again. So that's an option too. I don't know. As you said, we're not inside his head, so it's kind of tough to tell.
I mean, he's obviously a Texas guy. It would be funny to see him like beg out of being on the Spurs and then go like sign with the Mavericks. He would be an awesome fit, I think, on that team.
Yeah, that's true. That would be actually a great fit. I hadn't thought of that because they're struggling. Dwight Powell coming back from his Achilles injury hasn't been quite the same. Yeah, that'd be a great fit.
Last guy that I had on a list before, if there's any others you want to highlight, Al Horford, old friend of the Celtics. Like you said, wasn't a fit on Philly last year. He's playing well in OKC, but as you said, they're basically going to be, they're always open for business here. The Thunder are going to own every draft pick for the next like 6 years. What's the deal with Al Horford? Is he going to get traded just because they're just going to want to move him no matter what? What's his value to any other teams? If he does get traded, what's the most likely destination?
Well, I think at this point, the Thunder really value having him. I mean, he was out of position on the Sixers. The Thunder were able to get him with assets and a salary dump, and they moved him back to his natural position of center. And all of a sudden, he's playing fantastic, at least offensively. Defensively, he's taking a step back. He's gotten older. But having a guy like that around who can space the floor, pass, and be a leader in the locker room for your young players definitely adds value to your team. So they love having him around just for now. But like you said, Sam Presti's always open for business, and he'll move him if the price is right. And I guess the most important part of that is, everyone's talked about how grossly overpaid he is, which is true, but the last guaranteed year of his deal is next season. The season after that is mostly non-guaranteed. There's a clause in there if he wins the finals, it becomes guaranteed. I don't think OKC is going to win the finals. But, that makes him a valuable asset in future trades when teams are looking to piece together salaries, either to acquire a superstar or to just get off of long-term money. So I could see him potentially getting moved at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this season. When we talk about the Celtics, we could probably get into how the Celtics could use that contract in a sort of counterintuitive way. But I actually think another player to look out for on OKC is George Hill. The Clippers are looking for an upgrade at point guard, and Hill could, another one of these like reunions, Hill could team up with his old pal Paul George from his days in Indiana. And ironically, I think George Hill was actually the guy that was traded from the Spurs to get Kawhi Leonard. So he'd also be playing with that guy.
Yeah.
On the Clippers.
Oh, wow.
So that would be an interesting turn of events. I think he's on an expiring deal. It would make sense for OKC to just, like you said, collect the draft pick and just keep it moving.
Yeah. Before we get into the Celtics discussion and trying to sift through the absolute quagmire that is their roster and just the team in general, any other guys that are notable guys that you'd want to highlight here as far as names that could be on the move?
Yeah. Well, I guess there's a couple of restricted free agents. John Collins of Atlanta. I know the Celtics have been looking into him. It's always a tricky situation when you're trying to make a move for a restricted free agent because you give up all these assets to get him. Salary matching is easy because he's still on a rookie deal. But then he's obviously subject to restricted free agency. And unlike the NFL, if you lose him, you don't get anything. There's no like, oh, I get a second round pick because he was drafted in this round, or all the sorts of rules that the NFL has in place to protect the teams that have the restricted free agents. That's not there in the NBA. So it's always taking a huge risk making a move. But if Atlanta could just decide that they're not going to match an offer for John Collins anyways, and they don't want to mess around with a sign and trade and trying to, get assets for him in the offseason. So he's a guy who could be on the move. Minnesota has been looking at him. And then also Lonzo Ball of New Orleans. I had mentioned the Clippers looking for a point guard. That could be sort of a low-key trade that they can make. The Clippers are pushed up against the hard cap right now. They're in a situation where basically any salary they want to bring in, they have to send out. So it could be a really ugly situation where they have to move someone like Lou Williams or Patrick Beverly, who's sort of been the DNA of that team. But if they do want to make that upgrade and someone that they can add long term, I think Lonzo Ball would be a good fit there. And then obviously the Rockets are having a fire sale. I think it's a foregone conclusion that Oladipo is going to be gone. It doesn't make sense for a rebuilding team to just sort of hang on to him and lose him for nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, those would be the other guys to look out for.
Interesting.
Yeah, let's segue here. Let's segue to this bleep show that is the Boston Celtics. Huh? So they obviously have that TP. I think Danny Ainge has already confirmed that he's not going to use it. So what is the plan there? Does he wait till the offseason? First of all, I guess, is this team even worth buying on? And then I guess, who are they targeting?
Sure. Yeah, we'll get to that. But we should go through some constraints with this TP, and it might help some Celtics fans understand why he's not going to make a move. Because in a sense, his hands are tied a little bit. So rewinding back a bit in terms of how it was generated. So teams receive an exception when there's a difference between the outgoing salary and incoming salary. So it's basically like a credit where you can complete this trade 1 year into the future, up to 1 year into the future. So in this situation, the Celtics were going to lose Gordon Hayward for nothing. So Danny Ainge called up Michael Jordan and said, hey, I'll give you 2 second-round picks if I sign and trade Hayward to you instead of you just signing him outright in free agency. And the Celtics essentially got nothing in return, and that generated what was the largest trade exception in NBA history and still is, so $28.5 million. But the Celtics can't use the full value of that trade exception mid-season. So they went out this past offseason and they signed Tristan Thompson with a mid-level exception. That's one of the situations that triggers the hard cap. So the Celtics in order to bring back a player, anyone who's making at least 20 million, they're going to have to send out some money. And they're also going to have to send out money if they want to dodge the luxury tax, which Wick might not be willing to do so anymore with the team being at 500. So those are kind of the constraints he's working with, where he has to avoid the hard tax, or sorry, the hard cap. Wick might be telling him to avoid the tax or you're fired type of thing. And he's already in the whole 2 second-round picks just to create the opportunity. And this is a GM that has typically tried to extract as much value from other teams as possible. And now kind of the role has been reversed. I mean, teams know that he's already down picks to have this trade exception, and they could try to basically take advantage of him. So he might be just hoping to wait for the offseason. And yeah, that kind of leads into the problems with this team. I mean, they have a Gordon Hayward size line or hole in their lineup. I mean, they're just a total mess. It was a really top heavy team last year, and it's basically the same team as last season. So when you have this really top heavy team with not a lot of depth, you lose Hayward, you lose Marcus Smart for an extended period of time. Kemba Walker's coming back from injury. There's no practice time. It's a compressed schedule with COVID. All these things are kind of sort of compounding on each other. And yeah, basically this team isn't equipped to survive a season like this. You could argue that all the teams are going through this, but I think the Celtics more so than other teams not having depth, it's sort of exacerbating the problem. And it is a legitimate question, is this team worth buying on? I mean, Danny Ainge came on local radio a couple of weeks ago and said that it was a mistake to not trade Marcus Morris and Terry Rozier back Kyrie's last season when the team was struggling. And maybe we shouldn't be asking, who do we want with the TPE? Maybe it should be, who are we trying to sell on? Is it Daniel Tice in the final year of his contract? Maybe they figure they won't be able to re-sign him anyways. A lot of talent has walked out the door over the past 3 years for basically nothing. So Ainge could just decide that this team isn't good enough and basically just do a soft tank and trade anyone who's on an expiring contract and hunt for the offseason. But if they were to go out and add a player who could really help them, there's a few of them if we want to walk through them, but I don't know if that's going to be the move.
Before we do that, I want to because I agree with everything you said about why the team is bad. It starts with the roster and the poor construction of the roster and the talent issue. But can you make the reverse argument as far as, are they worth buying on and getting something? That the lack of depth has put in not filling Gordon Hayward's shoes has put more on the Jays' shoulders, which from a number standpoint, they have risen to the occasion. They are both all-stars. Their averages are way up. That's a product of the minutes they're playing. But the minutes they're playing has also worn them down. I think you've seen their offensive game, they're having to work harder on offense because they're getting double-teamed and blitzed and trapped because they know those are the only two options. It's kind of led to a lack of trust in the guys around them because the guys around them aren't actually that good. Like Semi Ojeleye, good role player. Having him take 6, 7, 8 shots a game is not what you want out of him. So maybe early in the season, I'll trust Semi to take some shots, and Tatum's willing to make that pass. But then these guys break down. They're not playing as good defense anymore because they're expending so much energy. You lose some games. The pressure mounts. Pressure mounts on the young guys who wanted this to be their team. They hear that noise. They think, well, we really need to win. And I don't think Tatum and Brown are selfish guys, but I think when you're that young and you're hearing all the noise, you want to make sure that you win to cure the problem. I think they all want to win, but do they want to win together? And so now maybe it's a critical situation. Tatum doesn't want to give up the ball because he's like, I love Shemi, but we really need these points. Even though the right play is there, I trust myself to make this shot. So they make bad decisions. They're more tired. They're more lackadaisical on defense. The team loses more. The pressure gets higher. These guys start playing more. Is it just all compounding itself? And that's the reason to buy. Don't let this turn into a season of just horrible habits. add a piece now to alleviate the pressure on those two guys so that you can keep developing a team? And if you don't do that, should you send a clear message to your team that this is, like you said, a soft tank? Let's change our expectations. We are not winning the finals. We are not getting to an Eastern Conference Finals. We need to just manage the Jays' minutes. I worry about Jaylen Brown tearing his patella tendon. He does not look the same. Even though he's scoring well, his defense and his explosiveness is completely gone. And manage those guys' health, manage their expectations, let the rest of the team develop, and get back to just playing hard, basic, good basketball. And like you said, playing on all the other moves in the offseason. It's either buy in and really just try and ignite this team, or completely and emphatically go the other way, right? There can be no middle ground here, or else you're just going to have a quagmire of a year, and I feel like the Jays are going to just kind of go down this really bad road of not being able to take the pressure.
Is there a possibility that this roster is just not good enough to win, and they're not going to win together?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think right now it is, but that's an excuse to buy on it because you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and you don't want to be in a situation where these guys are going down. Would you want to have them play out this whole year though? Unless you sit them, if you don't buy on this team, I feel like you have to sit them down and explain to them what they need to do the next month and a half, which is to just forget about the pressure of winning a championship this year. That's gone. Let's just play good basketball. What do you think, Matt, as far as that being an argument for you either have to do that with them and have a really good talk, or you have to go out and get Harrison Barnes and tell this team that we're going to amend, do what Bill Belichick did. We're going to admit our mistakes. Jeff Teague, maybe Tristan Thompson, sayonara, or Daniel Tice, we're going to sell on you now when we should have sold on guys in the past. We're going to get Harrison Barnes this year, and maybe the added talent will help everybody play better. And that'll fix it. Even though they don't deserve it, they need it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely at a crossroads this season. It's always tough to make in-season trades, and Danny Ainge has done a good job about managing expectations. I mean, he's made it somewhat well known that he's hoping to use this big trade exception in the offseason as opposed to right now. But like you said, I do think they either need to sell on some of these players or add a guy. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Harrison Barnes. It could be a mix of both. It could be, trading Tice and a few other guys for maybe a wing player with picks, just someone who can soak up minutes, because it is worrying to watch Jason Tatum out there coming back from COVID. Hasn't quite looked the same. His cardio isn't great, according to him. Jaylen Brown with the knee issue, and I think we dodged a bullet with Marcus Smart not popping his Achilles. I mean, so there's that aspect of it. When you have this top-heavy team where you pretty much only have 6 guys getting major minutes, and you're playing back-to-backs every single week, someone's going to get hurt. And you don't want it to be a major injury to one of your young players who you just signed to a massive extension. So yeah, there is motivation on that end of a trade of just hey, let's get a guy who's going to soak up minutes, who's an actual NBA player. Because so far, I mean, Aaron Nesmith, I think he's going to be a good player, but he's young. And he didn't have a training camp or a real off season. Romeo Langford's apparently still on the team. I don't know what's going on there. Hopefully he can get healthy and give them some minutes. I mean, that would be the only saving grace, is if they decide to just not make a move, it's because they're going to give big minutes to those 2 young wings. But if they do none of those things,
they
have to. Yeah.
Where's the coach in all this, though? Can I just ask that? Because I feel like Aaron Nesmith...
Apparently in Indiana.
Yeah, I guess so, huh? They're 20-21 right now. Why is Aaron Nesmith not seeing the floor above, Semi Ojeleye or something? You're losing the games anyway. So throw the kid in there and let him play.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean,
even Semi's not seeing the floor. They only played 6 guys. They didn't play a whole bunch of their bench guys the other night.
Yeah. I mean, Brad always wants young guys to earn it. I mean, that was a huge frustration watching the development or lack of development in James Young's career. I mean, when he was on the Celtics, I mean,
It is prophesized he'll return one day. 10
one
years.
day. Yeah, I mean, there's different paths you can take. You can either throw a guy out there, let him play through his mistakes, and he develops that way. I mean, you could also end up killing his confidence, builds bad habits, and things go the other way. We kind of saw that with
what confidence?
That's true.
Does he have any?
That's true. I mean, I guess the problem is what Brad would normally want to do is put a guy through the G League, have him perform well in practice, but for whatever reason, they opted out of the G League bubble. And of course, they don't have practice time. So it's really hard to evaluate your young players and then make decisions like, hey, you strung together, 2 weeks of great practices. We're going to play you 20 minutes a game for the next 3 games. Like you said, I think they're kind of at a point where they need to take a leap of faith and just start throwing guys out there. Because they're not winning anyways. They're 500. The Knicks are ahead of them. The Hawks are ahead of them, I think. I mean, Gordon Hayward and the Hornets are ahead of them. So at this point, just forget about this whole, like, you have to earn it thing. It's a weird season. Just throw guys out there and give them minutes.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I don't see the point. I mean, look, they're in a weird spot. I mean, it's just they kind of just suck. I don't know. They like Tatum and Brown. I think for all the gripes, I think they are part of the problem here. Like they wanted this team, now they have it, and they're just not playing on the same level. So,
but it's because it's just them. That's what I've been saying. It's like it's a self-creating problem. Like, it's not them. They don't need other superstars. I think they just need competent role players around them, and they don't even have that. I think if you had if you had Kyle Korver instead of Semi Ojeleye in the corner, I think this team is way better. Like, they need role players around them. They don't need to. People are like, everybody freaked out, and we're going to talk about the Nets here in a minute in our broader NBA discussion, but oh man, I hope the Celtics are eating crow not signing Kyrie. It's like, it wouldn't have worked. Those guys with Kyrie Irving was not going to work. Gordon Hayward, we know it now, did not want to be third fiddle to these young guys. He wanted to show that he was still a star, but they don't need stars. Tatum and Brown are good enough, but they need at least decent role players around them, and that's the problem.
Do they know how to win, though? Like, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, is there a potential for this team just not being, constructed? I'm not saying the other roster. I'm saying Brown, Tatum, Smart, these 3 guys, the young guys. Is it possible that these 3 guys just will not mesh and win together? Because I think that's becoming a real, a real possibility.
If you surround them with, cow poop, yes. I mean, there's like, if they are not good enough. It's not like you're looking at LeBron James, Giannis, and Kevin Durant with those 3. And it's like, listen, you could just put Scrap Heap around it, and Scrap Heap is going to look great because those guys are all world. Jalen, Jason are really, really good. I think they're superstars that you can build around on this team. Marcus Smart is a heart and soul guy, a glue guy of the team. But I don't think of him as like the third piece in a big 3. I think of him as like a 6th man. But I don't think they need another superstar. Most of these teams now don't have 3 superstars. It's like the dynamic duos, but then really good rosters around them. The roster right now is just not. The rest of it
should not be losing to the Cavs. They should not be losing to the Pistons.
But in this year, I think you do because, Matt, you need to break the tie here because I think they're losing to these teams because if you just played the Pistons one-off, yes, but like in the course of a season, with the minutes they've played and the mounting pressure and expectations, I think when it's just Jalen and Jason trying to do it all on their own, either because they're not trusting their teammates or because they literally have to, they've worn down to a point where this team just looks so tired and everything is so difficult that they're getting beat by other teams which are just playing looser and more together, like the Kings. And even if the talent at the top isn't the same, the rest of the roster just helps itself. And without any supporting cast, this team won't beat anybody. They would lose to the Timberwolves.
Andrew, I was told by you that they were going to be the number 1 seed in the East when Kemba got healthy.
Well, is he healthy? Kem bad. He's looked like Kem bad.
You're telling me everybody else sucks on the roster. So was I right or were you right?
I had well listen, I said if healthy and if meeting their expectations. I haven't even mentioned Kemba here because I feel like we haven't even had Kemba back. He should be that complementary third piece
Do you
to a
think
big
Kemba
three.
makes that big of a difference though if he's healthy on this team? I don't. They're
Right
probably like their
now, right
fifth
now
or
for
sixth
this
seed.
right now for this roster,
They're better
yes.
than the Knicks. Congrats. Like
Sure.
I don't know if
Matt,
that's
what
anything
do
to
you
write home
think?
about.
So a couple things. I mean they've won games when Kemba plays well, but that doesn't mean it all. His team lives and dies off of him. Um, they do need another piece to consistently perform that's outside of Tatum and Brown. But on the other hand, I do agree in some sense with Christian about they do need to learn how to win. And they've been very lucky and very fortunate early on in their careers where they were drafted to very good teams, whether it was Isaiah Thomas and Al Horford or Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. They've always had, all these things came together perfectly. They got all these draft picks from the Garnett trade, and then they also had all this cap space. So they were able to add a bunch of talent, established NBA talent, to go along with these young players. And now the young players are all alone. They have to win on their own now, essentially. But it's important not to just look at it through the lens of this season, because I mean, if you look at past stars, they struggled for years to learn how to win.
Yeah.
And so I think, both of those things can be true at the same time. Like, yes, Tatum and Brown are struggling to win. And even if you had better players on the team, they'd still be struggling to win in a sense because they haven't had to do it on their own. But they don't need to figure it out this year. I think it's just the fact that the past few years we've been in the Eastern Conference Finals. We've been so close that it's hard to take that step back and say, okay, this is a team that's going to be ready to win in 2023 or 2024 as opposed to right now. And so I think they're feeling that pressure and they can't meet those expectations. And they shouldn't necessarily be expected to, but they should be playing better. If they could add some guys to take the pressure off of them, it would certainly help. But I do agree in a sense that they do need to learn how to win. Because as of right now, they don't. I mean, it's clear they're not winning. They got everything they wanted. They're getting all the shot attempts. They're getting everything at the end of the games. I mean, Kemba Walker has come out and said, that he's willing to take a step back and let them do their thing. And it's not like just one of them is alone. I mean, it's not like this is a team that we're talking about only Jaylen Brown. I mean, those are two very good players. And like you said, duos are sort of like the in thing in the NBA. That it's like big threes are out. It's like either you're a duo or you're a super team with like 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they do need to learn how to win, but there's definitely things Danny Ainge could have done differently to support them in that effort. I think going out and using their mid-level exception on Tristan Thompson instead of a wing player really hurt them and sort of undersold Rob Williams' development. I have nothing against Tristan Thompson as the player. I think he'd be a really good center coming off the bench. But right now they're manufacturing minutes for Rob by starting Thompson at the 5 and Tice at the 4 where he's out of position. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just not it's a poorly constructed roster, which is not characteristic of Danny Ainge. I don't know, it's just
their depth chart is a quagmire.
Yeah.
Who if they do decide to go after somebody and they make a move here at the deadline, who are they targeting and why?
So I mean, there's a couple guys. I think a few of them are out of reach. I know a lot of people, especially Scal on the broadcast, was talking about Jeremy Grant. He certainly fits Danny Ainge's requirement of shooting with size at the forward position. He was originally actually a part of the process in Philly, got traded to OKC where he continued to improve. Denver made a move for him last season where he helped them get to the Western Conference Finals as a role player. And he ultimately left the Nuggets for a larger role in Detroit, where he's currently putting together I think, a most improved player of the year campaign. The asking price, though, would be pretty steep. He was a recently signed guy. Anytime as a team when you sign someone and then you immediately trade them is never a good look. And he has a good relationship with Troy Weaver, who's the top front office guy in Detroit, who actually used to be in OKC and was a big part of bringing Jeremy Grant on board there. And he actually also recently pulled off a trade for Diallo, who's another guy from OKC, another athletic wing. So it sort of seems like Troy Weaver's building around those two guys. And it just wouldn't make sense at this point that he would even be willing to give up Jeremy Grant. I think that would be like the dream scenario. He would be the perfect fit and would fix all of our problems, on paper. But then there's, again, the human element of it. He left Denver because he wanted a larger role. So if we're going to use the trade exception, which we got from Hayward leaving from wanting a larger role, we're going to use that on Grant, then you kind of get the sense that there isn't enough basketball to go around, and that he wouldn't be happy here. So for those reasons, I'm out on Jeremy Grant, although I think Danny Ainge is definitely going to look into it, because if he can pull that off, it would be a fantastic fit. I think the more realistic option, and it's a fairly obvious one, everyone's been talking about it, it would be Harrison Barnes. And a big part of that is just his career arc as a fourth option for the Warriors. He eventually went on to Dallas to be the man. He couldn't be the man, was famously traded mid-game to the Kings and basically a salary dump. They gave him an extension at a more reasonable deal. He's back to being the fourth option. He's putting together a fantastic year. He can shoot, defend. He can play both forward positions. And what actually stands out to me the most is back in 2016 when he was selected to the Olympic team where they won a gold medal. Harrison Barnes, maybe not necessarily a household name, but he was on that Olympic team with all those superstar players. There are plenty of other guys who could have been on that team. And then you have to ask yourself, why would the coach select him over all of those other guys? And it's because his teammates love him. He's willing to do all the dirty work. Just a glue guy who's just going to fit in and do everything that you need, who also has a ton of talent. He's not just like this overachieving guy. He was a lottery pick at one point. So I think for those reasons, he'd be a better fit than Jeremy Grant. But as I mentioned earlier, the Kings are in a weird situation. They have an owner who frequently is, a meddling owner, does some really bizarre things. I mean, we could talk about it all day. I won't get into it, but that's a situation where the owner has more power than they probably should. And they also have a situation with a new GM with a head coach that he didn't hire, but he can't fire him because the minority ownership group doesn't want to pay for two coaches and two GMs. Just like a mess. I mean, be thankful you're a Celtics fan. It's so easy to complain right now. And it's okay to complain. That's like totally fine. But like, holy crap, if you were a Kings fan, like this is just brutal to read through. But yeah, the Kings are in a position where they could still somehow get into the playoffs through the play-in tournament. And even though they should be selling, I mean, you sell high on Harrison Barnes and build around your two young players that you have, with De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton. But there's a chance they don't do that, and they just illogically just start buying to try to make a playoff run. So Danny Ainge could be out of luck there, but I think all it would take would be a first-round pick, a prospect under contract, maybe another pick. I don't know. They have to decide, as you said, are they going to go in and get a player who they think is going to help them over the next 3 years, or are they just going to sell and move guys like Daniel Tice? It's a tough call. Well, and some of it could be out of his hands because, again, there could be owners that just want to make the playoffs this season.
Yeah. Last guy, before we move, I have a question about the Nets and their situation. We'll try and rally through some of the rest of this stuff pretty quickly. But Al Horford turning him into the walking, talking TPE. Because like you said, you have to use it. Teams know you have to use it. If you wait till the offseason, you could get bent over the barrel anyway. So why not buy a quote-unquote bad contract and at least get something from a player who has value?
Yeah, I mean, that's huge because the trade exception, it expires 1 year from the date of that move. I think it was in November when Hayward got moved.
Yep.
So if you could get Horford for basically nothing, I mean, hey, that's shooting with size, and you're able to extend the life of that trade exception. You're no longer under pressure to make a move this offseason. And also you can aggregate his salary with other pieces to bring back even more, potentially a Bradley Beal, who's been rumored to want to play with Jason Tatum. So, I mean, I would love to see Al Horford back here, mostly for the contract reason. I think there'd be a lot of fans that wouldn't understand it, would be all upset, thinking about his time in Philly and how he left us and how he's performed on that contract. But yeah, that would definitely give us a lot of flexibility going forward.
So quickly here, we'll try and keep these to a minute or two. Thoughts on the Nets moves they've made? I mean, they obviously they sell some of the young guys. They bring back James Harden. Basically, haven't gotten to see the Harden, Kyrie, KD trio together. I think even though their talent is there, I don't know if they can win a finals because they just won't have had the time to mesh together. Even though it's worked with just two of the three on the court, we don't know what three on the court together will look like. They add Blake Griffin. Guys are just jumping onto that team for veteran minimum contracts. Your thoughts on their direction, and will it work? Will they be able to share the basketball? Will Kyrie be able to be the third option since he's not the point guard anymore? It's James Harden. KD's going to want touches when he comes back. Are they just going to go the way of the Clippers last year and be good enough on talent? But if they run into a team out of the West like Utah, who just is together and plays hard the whole game and executes, that they could get picked apart in a 7-game series, especially with no
We're
defense.
doing this now? Oh my God. Oh my
what?
God.
Doing what,
I
Christian?
believe this. You think Utah is going to beat Brooklyn?
In a 7-game series? Let's ask Matt. I'm asking Matt the question.
God.
So, I mean, to me, they are a little bit like the Clippers of the East from last year. They definitely have more talent on paper, but with essentially zero practice time, it's going to be difficult to build that chemistry that they're going to need to advance deep in the playoffs. Before we even get to the Jazz or anything like that, just looking at the East, I mean, I'm putting my money on the Bucks just from roster continuity and everything they've dumped into that team. But Brooklyn, I mean, they're certainly like a boom or bust team to me. I could see them winning the finals just as equally as I could see them losing in the second round. They could be another spot for buyout candidates, which again is super annoying watching a team like that continue to add talent. And we'll see. We'll see if talent with potentially not a lot of chemistry can win out over these teams like the Bucks or Utah, teams that have been together for a long time, clearly haven't been affected by this compressed schedule in the way that some other teams have. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say. I'm putting my money on the Bucks for coming out of the East, but Brooklyn's definitely a boom or bust team for me, or at least for this season.
All right, Christian, go ahead. Ask the question next. That will give you your answer.
Yeah. Who's going to the Final Four? Who's making the finals? So obviously you said the Bucks. All right. So who do you think the Bucks ultimately beat to get to the championship, and then the West as well?
I'm thinking the Bucks. I'm gonna go for just because Brooklyn annoys me. I'm gonna go for the second round exit outcome for them, even though they could just as easily win the finals. But I'm rooting for Bucks, Sixers, and Jazz, Clippers. I like to see the Clippers go out and solidify that point guard position and actually get to the Western Conference Finals. And I'm really hoping for a Bucks Jazz finals. I mean, just two small market teams. It would be nice to see a finals without LeBron, first of all. I mean, nothing against LeBron, but it gets kind of old when he's just in the finals every single year. and also just to see Giannis's loyalty rewarded, signing that contract and deciding to stay with the Bucks. I think it would be pretty cool if he could bring a championship to Milwaukee. So I'm going with the Bucks.
Yeah. If he doesn't win, he's going to ask to be traded next year. You didn't mention the Lakers there. Now, obviously, their injuries are piling up. I think the AD injury compounded. Now, obviously, it was a freak injury, but LeBron having to play more minutes and a guy who's avoided major injury most of his career, the odds were just eventually going to catch up with him. And he gets hurt the other night, high ankle sprain. Don't know how long he's going to be out. They're at risk of having to potentially, they could fall into the play-in round scenario. And the Lakers, of all teams, could potentially play one game and be out. Do you think do the injuries alter at all what they would want to do at the trade deadline? And are they even capable of doing anything? Yes or no?
I think the Lakers, I mean, they have some salaries they could shuffle around, but I think, there's a chance they could sort of pseudo punt to next year. I mean, imagine how awful it would be. They just barely miss the playoffs, but somehow win the lottery. I mean, that would be like the most typical Lakers thing that would happen, right? But yeah, no, I think they're gonna try to basically skirt by and get into the playoffs. And if LeBron can get healthy, I mean, obviously they'll make a run. But I think there's a chance that this year just isn't their year. I mean, especially with a team that centers around LeBron, who's been to so many finals over the past 10 years or whatever it is. It would be tough to do in a season where you had essentially no offseason, no rest. Yeah.
Yeah. Last bit on LeBron. He is part owner now of the Boston Red Sox. Obviously, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking baseball here, and we don't need to get into like what were his motivations behind this. I think it was part opportunity. He's part of the Fenway Sports Group to begin with. He's wanted to get into ownership of teams, so this was just convenient for him to up his stake and do that. But Matt, one who I know likes to think about the long game and the NBA conspiracy theory, do you think he's just setting himself up for a warmer welcome when Danny Ainge sells out for Bronny and LeBron is forced to come here?
No, nope. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid on that one. He's trying to make lots of money. That would be my guess. He's a very good businessman. He's trying to make a bunch of money. I will say that whichever team can land Bronny in like whatever it is 3 years from now will get LeBron James. I don't think that's going to be the Celtics though.
What if couldn't it go the other way? Whatever team drafts him, whatever team LeBron is on, is just since he's GM is going to be like send them 2 first-round picks and bring my son here.
Oh, you better believe it. I mean, he's been training to be a GM since his days with the Cavs. I mean, he's been trading players already. I mean,
LeBron's plan is to get Bronny on the Celtics, and then he's going to retire and do a Michael Jordan, go play for the Red Sox. That's the ultimate plan.
So let's like kind of go through here some summation of just kind of the trade deadline stuff. I do want to get your thoughts on some March Madness things as well, Matt. So we'll do that to round out the show. But Christian, take it away here, and we'll kind of just sum up the thoughts on the trade deadline.
Yeah, give me a rumored trade with the highest percentage to happen and the lowest percentage to happen.
Okay. Well, it was going to be PJ Tucker, but he's already gone. I think the highest percentage is Victor Oladipo getting moved. I mean, I just don't see the Rockets hanging on to him, letting him leave for essentially nothing. Memphis could be a surprise team here. It's a small market team that essentially has to get out ahead in free agency in order to secure a player like that. Oladipo has also been rumored to want to be in Miami, and I think Dallas has the right mix of contracts to get it done. But I would say the highest percentage move would be Victor Oladipo not being on the Houston Rockets. If I had to pick one, that's tough. I'll just go with Dallas. Why not? Speed around. Lowest percentage, I'm going to say Bradley Beal. For whatever reason, he's decided to just stay firm on his commitment to the Wizards. I don't understand. Yeah, I admire it. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, but for now, that's where he's going to be. And I mean, a trade with him would shift the power dynamics of the NBA, but at least for now, it seems like those trade rumors are dead.
Rumored trade you would most want to see happen.
Um, Either, like we were saying, time to make a decision. We're at the crossroads. So either a buy type of trade where Harrison Barnes is going to Boston, or we free Daniel Tice and send him to like the Nuggets, and we forget about the Celtics, and whatever team we send him to becomes like our Western Conference team that we root for. That's what I would want to see happen. Just not staying put for once.
Yeah. Under the radar trade that will most improve a team.
Under the radar trade, yeah. So the Kings have a whole bunch of guys that they're just kind of sitting on. I mean, apparently Jabari Parker is on that team, just rotting away on the bench. But actually, another guy that I think could be a good fit for pretty much anyone who's looking for a big man who can shoot and pass the ball would be. I'm going to butcher his name. I think it's Nemanja Bjelica from the Kings.
Oh, yeah.
He was a guy who was in their lineup. They basically told him that they were going to bench him to play younger players, and that he'd be, playing 10 minutes a game or whatever. He said, "Screw you, I'm not playing at all," and actually sat out. So I think there's a good chance that he's going to be on the move. He originally signed with Philly a couple years ago, and then decided that he wanted to go back to Europe, and then he changed his mind and joined the Kings. So I think Philly actually could be a good spot for him. Could give their bench some shooting and some passing and a different look in the playoffs, depending on whether or not they would want to play him or Dwight Howard. So I think that would be like a really easy move Philly could make for a second round pick, and it could maybe bail them out of a playoff series.
Awesome. Matt, part of what's going on right now in the college ranks obviously has a huge impact in the NBA. We did not get a March Madness tournament last year, and I think we saw probably some guys just suffer from that because they didn't get the chance to showcase themselves. It's a great opportunity for them. Also, guys who maybe were like mid like a guy like Obi Toppin. If Dayton went and won the tournament last year, he could have been a top 3 pick in the draft potentially. What is your
dunk contest winner?
Yeah, that thing was a stud. The first round of that dunk contest was like, wow, okay, these guys have brought something new to the table, and then everything after that was completely just,
Meh.
yucky, disappointing. But your thoughts on the impact of March Madness on the NBA draft and how important the tourney is for prospects and getting to have it this year?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think overall, some teams tend to put too much stock into it. It ends up being this recency bias thing, especially when you have an owner who meddles, who just falls in love with a guy that they saw score 30 points in a game. But it is important to see how those players perform under the bright lights. But more importantly, I think this season, I really think the tournament's going to be an opportunity for college players to showcase their talents in comparison to the G League Ignite team and those guys that decided to skip college and take a different route to the NBA. So we'll get a chance to see how guys like Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley compare to Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga. So, and how is that going to influence the one and done culture of college basketball? And are there going to be more and more young prospects that decide to just, hey, I'm going to skip college and take my $250,000 and go play in the G League with Amir Johnson and other veterans who are going to help me learn how to play basketball and get a head start on my career. So I think this is sort of the turning point with college basketball and NBA prospects. And we'll see if it was just a blip on the radar. Maybe it was because of COVID and there was uncertainty surrounding, college basketball, and guys decided, hey, it's a safer bet just to take the money in the G League. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see which one of those prospects win out, and if college basketball helps them more versus playing in the G League.
Yeah. We have gotten a number of written in questions about this issue. And we had a lot of stuff we wanted to get through first, but I know me and Christian want to address this, and Matt, as somebody who knows basketball, who's been around college athletics yourself, especially D1 athletics, I want to get everybody's thoughts here on this NCAA women's basketball tournament situation. So first, for those who don't know, if you've been under a rock, I'm just going to play this video, which is from Oregon women's basketball player Sedona Prince. She put out this video a couple of days ago, and so let's just roll this first. Let's hide Matt Murphy's name there. So let's just roll this first, so everybody can kind of get the lay of the land of what was happening, a discrepancy between the men's and women's basketball tournaments.
I got something to show y'all. So for the NCAA March Madness, the biggest tournament in college basketball for women, this is our weight room. Let me show y'all the men's weight room. Now, when pictures of our weight room got released versus the men's, the NCAA came out with a statement saying that it wasn't money, it was space that was a problem. Let me show y'all something else. Here's our practice court, right? And then here's that weight room. And then here's all this extra space. If you aren't upset about this problem, then you're a part of it. I got some.
So that is what was going on at the women's tournament. The NCAA came out with a statement, like she said, and they said, oh, it's space. We plan to have a full weight room for the Sweet 16 going forward. Obviously, tons of backlash, and they have fixed the issue since after mounting public pressure. I think you get no credit for doing that, but I want to read some of the questions we've got on this. This is from Mary. Hi, guys. I'm curious about your position when it comes to the disgusting difference in treatment that NCAA athletes are receiving. We've seen the inadequate training facilities. They also had terrible food. Then there was the swag bags and all the food. How can they expect the females to compete at their best when they aren't provided the tools, aka edible food and more than a set of weights found in someone's basement? I'm sure if the NCAA had put a little time into this, they could have even found sponsors willing to donate meals and equipment. Thank you. Your guys' reactions to initially what was the woeful and almost borderline disrespectful situation at the women's basketball tournament.
Well, I'll just start with this. I think the NCAA is, I don't know how dumb you can be, especially in the day of social media, right? So if you're going to try to hide something like this and then later fix it and take credit for it like you did something good, you can spare us all that. That's not the way to go about it. But, starting off the top, it's just, this is one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen from the NCAA. And they've had their fair share of moments, right? But to give the women's side, who has clearly the space to do it, a rack of 10 weights, and then you go to the other side, and it's just there's a huge discrepancy issue. I don't know if you're anyone saying like Swaggy P that this is, well, you're Andrew, you said it. I don't even know what he said.
He said, "Oh, you guys know you're the JV, whatever." Yeah. Like
if you have that mindset, I just think you're flat out wrong, and you should probably just not say anything. It is. I'll just leave it at this is probably one of the most embarrassing things the NCAA has ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the flow of the money looks like, but as you said, even if they're making more money off of men's basketball, everyone has phones. Like, how stupid can you be? Instead of being reactionary, just get out ahead of it and make sure that everyone has what they need, and then you don't have any issues like this. I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense to me. The NCAA for a long time has been trying to play both sides of the fence where, they're all just student athletes and everything's equal and we're all here to compete. But then they're very clearly making money off of certain aspects of the game. And typically it's men's sports. So if you're going to do that, at least give all of the players what they need in order to keep up that charade. It doesn't make any sense what they're doing. They just shot themselves in the foot.
Exactly, and I agree with you guys. Social media, it's gonna get out. Now they'll claim Title IX says you give it to the men, you have to give it to the women, but clearly, this is not equal parts. The weight room that the men got, this is not like 50 years ago where you could say like women don't lift weights. I most of the collegiate women I see outlift men. They're harder workers in the weight room than some of the guys. So like it's not like girls don't lift weights in today's day and age. They do. They work just as hard and outlift some guys. So to think that like there's this presumption that like, oh well, they wouldn't have needed a weight room, like none. It almost makes sense if you said we were going to downsize as the tournament went on. You should, because of lesser teams. Well, listen, dude, we closed the weight room because it's the last day of the tournament and like everybody's going home tomorrow. We're sorry. No, you started with that. You didn't think that was going to get out. And the Title IX thing, it's like, just add 2 to cart. You have to give them the same thing. So why risk giving them something lesser? The food, I don't know if I'll be able to pull up the pictures of the food. The men basically had like full on gourmet buffet, and the women got like microwaved like plastic meals. Like, how did you think, like, so the buck you saved for a day before, because this blew up in a big way, and good on Sedona Prince. She put this out there, and they got change. They got a brand new, they got all the weights, they got everything they needed, the food's better. The swag bag, which was basically like a little tiny bag where the men had like a whole, bed full of things given to them. It's all been fixed. NCAA, good for fixing it. You get no credit. So you do not get a pat on the back for doing the right thing after the fact.
I was gonna say the only reason they did anything is because of the pushback. They weren't going to do anything if there was no pushback.
Yeah, but that's what baffles me. It's like you have to do it, so just add 2 to cart. Why even risk in today's day and age the exposure and the slamming you're going to get public relations wise? As far as the money, there's actually another question about this, and we can use it to answer that. At least I can answer the money thing through this. This is from Emily. So I guess my question for the show is, what's the response from the universities been? What has the response from the universities been? We've heard the NCAA's response, which was pitiful, but I'm really curious what the schools have to say and where their responsibility lies in all of this. And I'd say the schools have all been outraged, and you've seen schools that weren't even participating voice their outrage, which was part of the pressure. The money, guess what? NCAA tournaments are paid for by the NCAA. So the excuse that like, well, the men's team makes all the money is actually an even worse excuse, because that money should then be going back in to help. It should be a good thing. Yes, the men are going to make more money. That's just the way it is right now. But that money is supposed to lift. Rising tide lifts all ships. That's why we saw schools that couldn't play football this year cut 20 varsity programs because they just didn't have the budget for it. So you could say football gets all the money and all the attention, yes, but that's good for everybody if it's all evenly shared. That's the thing with these universities here is, they're all really pissed, but their responsibility really isn't that much. It would be now going forward. They're just whatever those conversations or accountability needs to make sure that this never happens again. Pressure from the institutions going forward, I think, is what would need to happen.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, it's just like, I haven't really seen much from like individual institutions. I know the VP of the women's, I guess it's the Players Association maybe for the women came out and had a statement, but I haven't seen much from individual institutions. Andrew, I just sent you something, a picture if you want to see the full spread of from swag to gym to the rest of it. There's a side by side from, all aspects of it on your email there. Email.
I was like, where did it go? Yeah. I knew I saw the notification. I'll go find it.
Yeah. But I just agree. I mean, there needs to be more. The fact that there's a lot of people still on the side of, like this is not that bad. I just don't know how you can think that. I just don't understand. If you just look at everything side by side, it's pretty clear there's a discrepancy here. And for people to defend that, I just think you've just like lost touch with society and where we're headed.
Matt, any follow up just while I'm pulling up this other thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It doesn't make any sense, and I mean, just do the right thing. I don't know. Maybe they have some science behind this where it's like, oh, if we're reactionary, we actually somehow save money. I don't know. That doesn't seem to add up to me. I mean, you can't. Not all your decisions. I mean, they can't all be money based. I mean, just like do the right thing, you know.
So there's the weight room comparison. It's a joke. Yeah, there's the difference in the food.
What even is that on the left?
That's supposed to be Salisbury steak. That's what she said in her post. That's what they told him that was. And here's the difference in the swag bag. Like, embarrassing. Now they've corrected all of it. And the NCAA put out a video of them like showing off. Oh, look at all the things the women have now. Woo! It's like you get no credit. None.
Yeah, it's like you don't get credit for doing the wrong thing and then fixing it. That doesn't that's not how it works.
Yeah. Somebody who and this is the last thing, and Matt, I've kept you along because I want to get your thoughts on this player. Somebody in the NBA, we heard Swaggy P, who basically said, you know, we all know y'all the JV, which is pitiful. Where is Swaggy P, by the way? Kristen, did you find out? Is he on a team or is he playing in China somewhere? Where is he?
I have no idea. I know he's a good meme, but other than that, I don't think he's anywhere. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I don't think he's on a team at this point.
So there's a spectrum here of reactions to this. There's the Swaggy P side, which is saying like, well, why do we care? Like the women or the JV, you all know that. Like blah blah blah. Basically, stay in your lane. Absurd, ridiculous, disrespectful. But the other side of the spectrum comes from somebody, and this person put it into perfect words that I don't think any of us would really have expected. I mean, maybe we could have expected it, but maybe it's going to be interesting that this is the source of somebody who put it perfectly into words. So here we go. We'll get both of you guys' reactions to one Kyrie Irving, who basically summed this up perfectly. So we'll just go ahead and let it play.
Society where, you know, we kind of expect so much from men or kings, and then we go out and show an effort like that. You know, in terms of how we show our respect for our queens going to play on a high level as well. It can't happen in our society. It's way overdue. It's been happening for years. We just have social platforms to be able to amplify it. But we need to make a change, not only just in the NCAA, but youth sports with girls. And I'm here to just follow the steps as a pioneer to continue to be a voice for that, you know, but that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable for that to be going on, for that not even be a conversation about what the women need there. And then for it to be an example of the highest level of basketball for some of these collegiate athletes to be there. And that's the example that's set. You know, so everyone talks a good game about how they want to change things in this world and society, and they had a chance and the NCAA failed. We live in a
So that's what Kyrie had to say. I think he said it perfectly, both in what had to be said, and also he said it in the most perfectly Kyrie way. Your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, I think he added some words in there that probably, you know, you don't need to add, but I think his point is perfect. Honestly, I think he explained it perfectly. For once, Kyrie, golf clap.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about Kyrie, but he's put his money where his mouth is. I think he dished out, is it like $1 or $2 million to WNBA players that decided to sit out from COVID. And yeah, I mean, good on him for speaking out. He speaks out about all sorts of stuff. So it's good to see him hop into the discussion here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, look, Kyrie can be a bit of a pill sometimes, right? But overall, Kyrie's a pretty good guy. I think he's a pretty decent human. He does a lot of good things. So, you know, he has some gabagool come out of his mouth sometimes that doesn't make a lot of sense. But he was spot on. And, I mean, he's done a lot of good. I think he's generally a good guy.
Yeah. I feel like that's got to be part of his brand, right? Like, that can't just be like... I feel like he does some of that on purpose to be like, oh, I'm the misunderstood genius.
Yeah, he definitely does. Yeah.
Well, when I went to go look for that, because I'd seen that video, and I initially went to his, that came courtesy of The Gist, which is a really good follow for keeping up on women's sports stuff, The Gist USA, and they have an international page as well. Really good follow. But I initially went to Kyrie's Instagram page, and like you said, Matt, here I'll pull this up too. Like part of the brand, the Kyrie brand, some of the stuff, like I initially am like scrolling down, and I was looking, I'm like, where's this video? Where's this video? Where's this video? But like he's got like all these like weird posts, like he's got Egyptian pharaohs and all this stuff. I'm like, what is going on? It's just so not typical of what you see out of professional athletes these days. I mean, he's very true to himself, but like he posts this, which is some Egyptian god with like a magic 8-ball. That's it, or just like a pool ball. Like, who is this? Is this like what Egyptian god is this? What does this represent? And everyone's just like, yes, nice, so inspirational. I'm like, who is it? What? I don't get it.
Yeah, hey, one thing I can say though, I respect him is he's definitely true to himself.
True.
Yeah, it's our fault really that we're not on the same flat plane of existence that he is on. That's why we misunderstand his message.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he posted a flat person here, 2-dimensional person. That's how he sees himself, like the Egyptians did. Goodness. Well,
But I think we can all agree he is right on one thing, and that is that post. So.
Oh yeah, no, perfect words. Disrespectful to women, and that as a society we need to do better. And yeah, for those girls who get there, that's like the peak of their collegiate experience, and that's how you get treated.
The
message that sends is awful.
The biggest problem, right, is that this has been a problem for so many years, but you can't see the light of it because of social media, right? So it's only amplified it, which is a good thing. Yeah. But he's right, and he's spot on when he says this has been a problem for so long, and it's now amplified by that. So, like, let's just NCAA just needs to, I don't know, get their heads out of their butts.
Yeah. We had a whole bunch of other March Madness stuff. I mean, there's going to be so much about that to talk about next week. I just say the only news bits on it is that we've already had a no contest because of COVID. VCU and Oregon didn't play. No contest. Oregon moves on, which is a tough break for VCU. Hopefully there's nothing spreading. This was obviously testing that happened on their way in, and they couldn't play a first-round game. Hopefully there's not something circulating in the bubble. And there's already been a whole bunch of upsets. Abilene, Texas won last night. The Maryland-UConn game was a good game. There's already been, Oral State beating Ohio State. Upsets all along the board. So obviously, I think this could be the maddest March of all. And we'll be able to break down much more of those games next weekend. But for now, Matt, I want to thank you again. Like Christian said, the popsicle headache you get from trying to delve through the numbers. We are very blessed and lucky to have you, somebody who I know enjoys sifting through and finding the devil in the details and helping ferret all of this out and explaining it to us plebeians, the salary cap and the happenings in the NBA. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your insights and taking the time for coming on and breaking it all down for us here today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Let's hope we're at a crossroads. Let's hope Day and Age does something.
Yeah, we shall see. So
free Daniel Tice.
Free Daniel Tice. So we can get more Daniel Tice hype videos. Last thing, who is that guy? Who's the guy you go to for the Daniel Tice hype videos?
Oh, Fongos. Yeah, just search for Fongos. Fongos. It's like a part of Weird Celtics Twitter. He makes unbelievable highlights of Daniel Tice and Jonas Jerebko. It's good stuff.
There you go. That's how we'll end it. So, Matt, great to see you, and we'll catch up with you sometime around the NBA draft, which will be right around the corner.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. That is Matt Murphy, our resident cap and draft analyst. Christian, absolutely loaded show. I mean, we've gone way over our normal time, but that's because we had just so much to digest here today.
Yeah. There's a lot to get. I mean, we had 4 hours worth of Patriots news in, an hour. So this is pretty condensed compared to what we had to talk about.
Yeah, so we ripped through it. Lots of NFL talk today, lots of NBA talk, March Madness as well. We'll get into more of the game stuff next week. The tournament will still be going on, we hope. Hopefully COVID doesn't shut things down. But wanted to make sure we hit on the women's tournament and all the stuff going on with them and giving that its due time. So if you missed the live stream here, if you're tuning in late, you can like, follow, and subscribe to us on Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, and YouTube. Just search for the 360 Sports Show to go back and watch any of the live streams archived. You can also take our show on the go with our podcast through Sounder FM or wherever you get your podcasts from. So that'll do it for us here today. For Christian Lauber, I am Andrew Bazzelli. Big thanks once again to Matt Murphy. Everybody enjoy the rest of the weekend. Stay safe, and we'll see you next weekend.
See you later.